best in the Caribbean, and our nurses really should be applauded as a result of this. I want to start off by telling you, though, a little bit about the immune system in your body. And this is a difficult process because we only have a few seconds to do it, few minutes. And I want you to understand, in that middle column there, where it says T cells, in your body, you have some very special white blood cells. White blood cells. You know about your red blood cells and your platelets that help with clotting, but you also have these white blood cells. Everybody would have picked it up from their biology lessons and so. And these T cells are so important. They will surround a virus or bacteria, germ, or even a pollen that you're allergic to, and literally engulf it, surround it, and destroy it. That's what's going on inside your body. They also release a lot of substances that would stimulate and tell another cell called the B cells. Hey, B cells, we have an invader inside the body. We have this strange virus, this something very going on. And what the B cells will do is to release antibodies. And these antibodies would surround the virus and put handcuffs on it, literally tie it down and neutralize it so that it can also be destroyed. And so what happens is that the T cells help to build up a lot of memory for the B cells. And anytime you are exposed to that germ again, you will have the B cells releasing more antibodies that will circle and put handcuffs on the virus and neutralize it. This is why if any of you are ever exposed to measles, mumps, or rubella, you already have that immunity because you have been vaccinated. And so those viruses cannot invade you. And I can't put up slides right now that will show you, with measles, literally about 1/20th of person, but 1 in every 20 persons normally would develop a pneumonia, and 1/3 of them would die from those pneumonias. It used to be serious problems long ago, and we've not had a case. And so if one were to now, in this box in the lower left-hand corner, vaccinate somebody, we are essentially stimulating these B cells to produce more antibodies to those substances we're vaccinating for. And what that is doing is priming your body. It's priming your body. So in case that germ, that virus comes along, your body is ready to pounce on it and deal with it. And that's really what our immune system is all about. And so I want to ask this question. If my immune system is strengthened with turmeric and ginger and good food, then it should be able to fight off the virus, yes? Shouldn't that be the case? Well, God created the immune system, I must say. However, when a virus you have never seen before invades the body, the immune system can take up to about 7 or 9 days to respond. And that time of that 7 to 9 days is critical. Some persons, that's no problem. Other persons, especially if you're diabetic and hypertensive, if you have heart disease, if you're aged, if you have chronic arthritis or any of the, what we call the arthritides, lupus, things of that nature. If you're asthmatic, sickle cell, I could go down the list. If you've had experience of cancer before, those 7 to 9 days may be too long for your own body to respond and develop an immune system. Now, the third bullet there, what if there's a large dose of the virus that gets in, is inhaled into your body? The infection can be worse than if it were a mild or short exposure or contact with the virus. But I want to also add in that last bullet, further, if the virus is virulent, very infectious, if it is a very infectious virus, then the infection can be very severe compared with another virus that isn't so severe. And so each virus has its level of contagiousness, its level of virulence, how much it wants to attack your tissue. And it depends on which tissue is attacked. And that's what we are looking to talk about today. I want to put this slide up. I know it's a busy slide. The virus, it is able to enter your body because it has special windows inside the tissue called receptors. You see that white arrows pointing to a little green button there? Well, that's called an ACE2 receptor. I should have made it bigger, but I wanted to show the virus, it's able to attach to that receptor, and it uses that receptor almost like a key. And it's able, and a window, to get in through that window and get into the cell. You see number 2. Then inside the cell, the virus, it multiplies. The virus uses your own tissue to multiply. And then after multiplying, you see where that yellow arrow is? You see one arrow has gotten in, one virus has gotten in, 1,000 is going to jump out, and we call that viral shedding. Viral shedding. So literally, if the virus gets, you breathe it in and it gets into the back of your nose and the back of your throat. I want to tell you that there are some special cells in the back of your nose and the back of your throat that the virus can get in. The virus cannot get into your toes, can't get into your knee, it can't get into your fingers, it can't get in sexually. It is going to get into the back of your nose and the back of your throat or your lungs. And after it infects those areas in the back of your throat, it is able to multiply inside the tissue itself. And some will get out into your spit and what you breathe out. And some may even go further into your body, trying to get into your blood. And that's where I want to get at. So here is somebody who's been infected and they're coughing. And this person is coughing, and you can see the cough cloud. And these are respiratory droplets. But inside the respiratory droplets, there are viruses inside the droplets itself. And some of those droplets are going to drop on the ground, on the surface in front of you. So if you have a computer, a laptop in front of you, a tablet, a cell phone, they'll drop on that. If you have a cup on top of you, they'll drop on that. A pen, they'll drop on that. Somebody comes and borrows your pen and your cell phone, they will pick it up with the virus on it, because the virus could survive for a couple of hours on those surfaces. And so they will have it on their hands. And if they don't sanitize their hands, if they don't wash their hands, and by chance they pick their nose, let's say, then they're introducing the virus that you coughed out into their nose, and it can get in and infect. And we have that big arrow there showing 4 feet. That's how long far these cough clouds, and we're encouraging persons to be 6 feet away. That is considered to be a safe distance. This is all very important. One of the things why we also talk about hand sanitizing, I always talk about this, the virus is surrounded by a very fatty envelope, a fatty envelope. This envelope protects the virus. It protects the virus. But just like frying an egg in a frying pan with oil, after you finish eating the egg, you want to wash out the pan, right? The frying pan. Well, just a little squeezy inside that frying pan will wash it out. Water won't wash it out at all. You have to use some soap, some squeezy. And this is why we recommend soap, liquid soap, or 70% or more hand sanitizer, alcohol in hand sanitizers. What it will do, it will crack that envelope, just like cracking a boiled egg. They're like cracking the shell of a boiled egg. And once that envelope or that shell is cracked, this virus is destroyed. So that is why we encourage people, please wash your hands or use hand sanitizers. You are literally cracking the envelope of the virus and destroying the virus in a split second. But I was talking about how the virus gets to the back of your throat. And you could see on the left hand, the external, I've got these two arrows, the top leading to the back of your nose and the back of your tongue. Those are the areas that get infected first. The virus could also get down in your lungs if you breathe in further, if you get a really good dose of the virus. If you breathe in a lot of this cough cloud and it goes really deep down in your lungs, you got it down there, and those receptors are down in your lungs too, and you will become infected. That's the reason why is in that yellow box there, ACE2 receptors, little windows, will allow the virus to get in. And this is what I want to point out. You see that little bar in front of the face? That is depicting a mask. By putting on a mask, you may well be able to prevent the virus from getting in. But you know, we don't wear the mask enough. We don't wear it properly. We have all kinds of holes in it. We have it above our noses, above below our chin. I will come to that in a while. But if the mask helps to protect from the outside, if things can get past the mask, you need protection from the inside. And that's where that big arrow comes on the right. We are saying that by taking a vaccine, you are developing antibodies inside your body that's waiting for the virus to try and get in. And from there, you basically can protect yourself from the inside if the virus tries to get in. Now, if the virus does get in, you know what it does? It gets into your blood. It gets into your bloodstream and it starts to circulate. Now, you may think that just your nose and the back of your tongue and your lungs, the virus can infect. Well, I want to show you this. The parts of your body that the virus really wants to infect are some of your organs inside. Let me point them out. Your heart, your kidneys, your brain, your liver. I could go wrong at the top left-hand corner there, your brain circled, your kidneys, your blood vessels, your heart, the bottom right, your muscles. In the middle of the bottom there is your pancreas that produces insulin. And then over there, your liver. The virus, in one person, it could infect the brain and the kidneys. Another person, the heart and the pancreas. Another person, it is the lungs and the blood vessels and the kidney. It's so strange how all these things, but I want you to know that the parts of your body that has the largest amount of those receptors, the ACE2 receptors, are your heart, your lungs, the lining of your blood vessels, and your kidneys. They have a large amount and they're going to get infected. And that's what we have been finding out. Now, I want to just, I shouldn't put up these very technical slides, but I want you just to understand what's going on. Here, you see this virus in yellow is becoming attached to your tissue, we call the host cell, and that receptor, the ACE2 receptor. Now, I want to show you what antibodies do. Antibodies come along and they intercept the virus and plug it up with, parts of the antibody, which is looking like what you have there on the right. And that red part there is putting handcuffs on the virus, neutralizing it and dealing with it in a particular way that it cannot go on to further infect. So I again ask some questions. Is it better to have the virus rather than the vaccine? What do you think? Am I and my family feeling lucky to avoid taking vaccines as the pandemic will just go away? There's a lot of information and videos out there, but are they accurate and trustworthy? Who made them? Who's sending them to you? Do they really care about you? Should I wait to get my vaccine until 2022 or 2023, 2 or 3 years away, because I feel I will wait a long time? Or should I just wait some time later? Or should I get it right now? This is what I really want to talk to you about today. And some people will even go further. I prefer the virus to the vaccine. The virus has no problems, hasn't done me anything. Now, the coronavirus just causes something like a common cold. Well, that is not true. And what's happening around the world, I want you to understand that we have over 117 million people dead up there in red. 2.52 million people have died. So far, they've given out over 240 million vaccines already. And then you see the US, India, all these countries. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, this figure is a little old. I have 1,600. We're about just over, we're about 1,600, but less over the last few days, we've not had many cases at all. Matter of fact, we've been recording 0 cases. Is the spike over? Well, we know there is community spread. And I have 8 deaths there. I want to correct that. I want to correct that. I deliberately left this. I want to put that. 9 deaths. 9 deaths. 9. This is what we face today, and it can get more. We vaccine approaching about over 8,000 persons. St. Lucia, they have over 3,900 cases. 46 persons have died in our neighboring sister island, St. Lucia. 46. And they've vaccinated over 10,000 people. Now, do you see this death rate of 2.2%? 2.2%? I want to just point that out. 2.2%. If St. Vincent was to have 2.2% there, we would have 30-something persons who would have died. So I want to thank the Lord that we only have 9. As a matter of fact, I wish we did not have any at all. I wish we do not have to go to 10 or 11 or 12. But the chances are likely that we may do that, you know? And I want to put it to you that the best chance of that, of avoiding that, is through vaccination. I want to quickly go through these slides. Our healthcare workers on the front line, they certainly need their prayers. They have been having lots of problems, all countries world. Across the world, they say over 20,000 healthcare workers, doctors and nurses have died, you know? And there are other frontline workers. I called healthcare workers front line, but policemen, teachers, people at the port, customs officers, they're also frontline and they must be protected. I also want to talk to you about something called long COVID, L-O-N-G COVID. We've now found out, ever since the last 4 or 5 months, we've been seeing some very strange things. We've been seeing that persons who were asymptomatic, there was a large study done in London at King's College Hospital, where they found over 200,000 persons had symptoms long after they had been positive. 32% of them had been asymptomatic at the time of their diagnosis. They had no symptoms at all. But later, they started showing after effects of the infection. This long COVID, they started having shortness of breath on exertion, chest pain, cough. They started having abdominal pain. But the main symptoms were chronic fatigue, not being able to get out of bed and go to the farm or go to church. Brain fog. They would have anxiety and stress depression. They would have chronic headaches. And I said shortness of breath on exertion. There are others, they found a good 25% had evidence that their heart was inflamed. And certain parts of their heart, when affected, would cause all sorts of rhythm problems. The heart would speed up and so forth. We call arrhythmias. They were seeing a lot of these things 3-4 months after the effect. And it's a new phenomenon called long COVID. And so whereas we once thought that all persons who were asymptomatic completely recovered, we are realizing that over 32% of them experience long-term effects. And we are not sure if those long-term effects are going to be lifelong or whether they'll be resolved. There's some evidence that taking the vaccine may well reduce those symptoms, but that evidence isn't completely in yet. We're watching that. But I want everybody to note that whereas the virus can kill 2.2%, whereas it could cause severe illness and hospitalization in many, there are some persons who had no symptoms at all, totally asymptomatic, who start, about 32%, with symptoms sometime later, debilitating symptoms, not being able to walk up Mackey's Hill, not being able to do various things. And I wanted to point that out. I want to say another key question is, what is causing these recurrent symptoms? Is it that the virus is acting up again? Or is it a new infection? Well, you could become infected more than once with the virus. Absolutely. That happens all the time. But what they recognize is the long-term effects of organ damage. What I was showing you earlier on, in terms of these organs, the virus traveling around in the blood, damaging these organs. But it's a slow infection, so you don't pick up the symptoms until probably some time later, 2 or 3 months. And the virus is causing all this out. What they've also noticed, if you notice what I've said in red, is that persons who were diabetic, their sugar goes out of control. And people who were pre-diabetic, in other words, they don't even know they were diabetes. The virus has thrown them into full-blown diabetes because it has affected the pancreas, a gland inside your belly, and has caused this infection. And we're seeing all kind of problems when we do x-rays and so. Here is somebody who has a normal lung on the left, but on the right, look where the yellow arrow is. That's scar tissue in the lungs, scar tissue. And you know, I would be able to see this. This is looking a little hazy. You may not see that. It's supposed to be looking black, but it's looking hazy and gray. That tells us scar tissue. And this is, oops, what did I do? Sorry, yes. This is on the right-hand side, the same picture. This is a special type of x-ray, and it's showing the scar tissue showing up. You see how that white stuff, that scar tissue showing up inside your lungs. These persons are unable to walk halfway up Mackey's Hill. I'm telling you, they won't be able to make it. And this is what we are seeing today. These are some of the problems that we are experiencing. Now, I want to also point out something that the virus does. The virus, these are some articles done in 2020. COVID-19 and blood clots. The virus itself causes blood clots. It causes blood clots in your heart, it causes blood clots, strokes, and so forth. The middle one in the box says, study COVID-19 infection combined with blood clots worsen patient outcome. So patients who have blood clots don't have a good outcome. And then there are all sorts of, there's a lot of articles that talk about this. And here is a kind of a blood clot inside the blood vessel. That's this way, a study reveals the virus triggers production of antibodies circulating through the blood, causing clots in people hospitalized with the disease. The virus is known to cause, And so it is what is known about COVID-19 and abnormal clotting is that we know the virus causes clotting. So it was very strange that about 2 weeks ago, that in Denmark, that several patients started showing some, who had been vaccinated, started showing some underlying problem. Let me stop here a second. Normally in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we lose about maybe 600 plus persons a year who would have passed away. Some of them die from cancer, with the leading cause of death. Others may die from high blood pressure related disease, others from diabetes, others from strokes. When you combine the heart disease and the strokes and so forth, a lot of them are dying from clotting diseases, a clot in the brain, a clot inside the heart, a clot in different parts of the body, embolus, a clot going to the lungs, knocking off the lungs. Normally, people in normal society, both young and old, have clotting problems. And yes, it can be as much as about 15% of our deaths, or even people who survive, because we could treat it, would have clotting problems at some stage. Well, I just showed you some slides indicating that the virus also causes clotting. So it's unusual for now it to be claimed that the vaccine may cause clotting in such a small percentage of persons, especially when in those societies, there are people who would ordinarily have clotting problems. And what is taking place is that the European Union, the European Union Medical Agency, and the World Health Organization are investigating these episodes that we've been hearing about, and has indicated quite recently that they do not believe that they were a cause of the vaccine. Several countries would have stopped and suspended the vaccine. But over the last 2 days, both France and Italy have resumed the use of the vaccine. France and Italy have resumed the use of the vaccine, and it's expected that by Friday of this week, the World Health Organization and the European Medical Agency would give an announcement on their impression from a scientific review of whether the vaccine was implicated. But I want to also point out that in Europe, there is a lot of politics taking place. England, the UK, started off a very brisk vaccination program. In England, they vaccinated 25% of their population already between England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland. They've done an absolutely tremendous job. And Europe, because there was Brexit, Europe asked England, AstraZeneca, Oxford AstraZeneca, we want the 80 million vaccines that you promised us that we ordered. And England said, well, we had also promised other countries of the world, and we are busy vaccinating our people too. We have to send vaccines to the Caribbean, vaccines to South America, to Africa, and so forth. We could only give you 30 million vaccines. And Europe was very upset. I don't know if everybody remembers. They decided at one point they were going to declare something called Article 16, which they could prevent the exportation of vaccines from England, from the EU, keep it in Europe. But England held firm and said, look, we could only give you, okay, not 30, 39 million. And they were very upset. Matter of fact, they were upset. About 7 countries said we are only going to approve the Oxford University AstraZeneca for persons under the age of 65 because we are unsure about certain things in relation to your study. Well, it is now a bit surprising. The same countries that would have indicated, the very same countries that would have indicated that they were only going to approve for entities under 65, that they, who had changed their mind afterwards and approved for over 65, have now been the ones to say they were suspending the vaccination program. Germany and France were two of those countries, and they have now reversed their process. So it is understandable if any of the listeners would have had some pause because of the publicity in relation to the Oxford University AstraZeneca vaccine. And the World Health Organization would have made an announcement that, first of all, if this was even related to any batches that were sent to Europe, it was not the same as what would have come to the Caribbean. And further to that, that there's no indication from their part that any vaccination program should stop, and that the way in which some of the European countries dealt with it was quite premature. And these articles, I'm sure, will be verified by other things. But I want to just go back to something. Remember, I was talking about the virus trying to get into your body. Well, I want to picture the virus trying to get into the back of your throat. I want you to picture a crook trying to get in through a window. Get in through that window that I was telling you about, the receptor, to get into your house. But if you are vaccinated, you would have antibodies that are like some pit bulls on the inside. Some pit bulls on the inside. Now let's hope they are potty trained, so they're not messing up on the inside. But if that person puts his foot in, they're going to hold on to that thief's foot, and they're going to deal with it. They're going to put some handcuffs on him. They're going to put some teeth onto that crook feet. And, you know, that's what really happened. That's what the vaccination program is all about. You've been vaccinated, and your body would have created some of these antibodies that are like pit bulls. That they have your body primed, waiting. So if the virus tries to get in, as soon as the virus steps foot into any cell, any tissue, your antibodies, pit bulls, grab onto the feet and deal with them. And that is essentially what is taking place today. Now, the big issue in terms of COVID-19 is treatments. I want to tell you that a lot of money have been spent around the world at different scientific centers trying to develop medications to kill this virus, antivirals. I am disappointed to tell you that not a single new medication has been developed. All of them failed. We had nothing. There have been studies upon studies upon studies, and after these studies, nothing new came up. However, there were some old medications, one of which, the first one in black, is a steroid, something called dexamethasone. That was approved. That's what Donald Trump got. He got a dose of that before he went into the hospital. But there's some old medication that Donald Trump was also trying to push, one that's called hydroxychloroquine. And that is a drug that we used to use to treat malaria in the past. As you know, I am an infectious disease specialist, and malaria is now resistant to hydroxychloroquine. So hydroxychloroquine is one of those, the only place in the world where malaria is still sensitive to hydroxychloroquine is in Mexico and Haiti. Yes, Haiti, there's malaria in Haiti. But the rest of the world, South America, Africa, Southeast Asia, malaria, hydroxychloroquine doesn't work, and has not worked since the 1960s. So they now use it for lupus cases, and it's hardly used as a medication. A lot of people were banking on this medication going back. When Donald Trump started talking about it, the people who wanted to make it, their stock went up. They were selling a lot of this, and then we found out it did not work, nor did bleach, nor did ultraviolet light that he was suggesting going, into your body. Definitely not bleach for sure. And the hydroxychloroquine didn't work. There is some also work on a drug called ivermectin. This is a kind of an anti-parasite medication. We now use it to deworm animals, to deworm horses and cows and so forth. I've used this. It may have some benefit, but it has not been approved by the FDA or any sort of medical body for COVID-19. Who knows, it may work, but somebody needs to show us a good study. People say the vaccine hasn't been studied enough, but those same people are suggesting to use ivermectin, but ivermectin has not been studied hardly at all or sufficiently to be used in this way. And then there are these other special antibodies that are in a bag. And I want to just skip that because these are so expensive. I'm not going to talk about that. This is what Donald Trump also got, these monoclonal antibodies. I want to talk about new vaccines that create the antibodies. We now have about 11 of these vaccines around the world. 11. You may think that's a lot. Well, it started off with 176 different attempts. And they have done all kinds of studies. A lot of these vaccine candidates, as we call them, failed because they couldn't generate enough of an immune response, or they had side effects, or they had some kind of problems. A lot of money was it. And as a result of 176, so far at this point in time, we have 11 that's been given what we call the go green light, And you've been hearing about them on television all the time. Pfizer, BioNTech, Moderna, these two are messenger RNA vaccines. You have the Oxford University AstraZeneca, which is the main one we're using. We also have the Sputnik vaccine, which we also, always looking at, and as a very good vaccine. The Johnson & Johnson, and there's in one here called the CanSino. These four in red are almost the same. The Oxford University AstraZeneca and the Sputnik are so close to each other in the way they were made, in terms of the manufacturing, in terms of things like that. There are studies right now talking about how they could be mixed and matched. But right now, we do not recommend mixing and matching the Sputnik or the Oxford University AstraZeneca. These bottom ones are in China, and we don't know enough about them. The second to last one, you hear this 50.4%? It has an efficacy of 50.4%. The pass mark for a vaccine is 50%. And that one has 50.4. So it just barely passed. The ones at the top, you see, the Pfizer, the Moderna, the Oxford AstraZeneca, and the Sputnik are all A+ vaccines in their 90s in terms of efficacy. What I do want to say is that the Pfizer vaccine, which is an excellent vaccine, it needs such cold storage condition, -70 degrees. So Elliot Samuel, he has a refrigerator, but the only refrigerator in the country right now that can do -70 degrees. We import in a couple, but we don't have enough because you can't buy them now. Everybody's buying them. You can't get a -70 degrees to put in Union Island, put in Fancy, put in Chateaubriand, put in every single clinic. And we have 40 different clinics. When the Pfizer vaccine thaws out from its -70, it could only last for 6 hours. And this is really important. We are using the Oxford AstraZeneca because it can be stored just at between 2 to 8 degrees, just in an ordinary refrigerator. The Sputnik needs -18 degrees as well, but that's doable. That's achievable here in Savings in the Granny, but the -70 is tough. Now, what we found lately after studies out of England and Scotland was that the Oxford University AstraZeneca was actually a very excellent vaccine. The studies would have been done and the drug would have been approved. And when it was being administered to millions of people, they kept lots of records. Vaccines, you must keep records. Anytime somebody gets an injection, they have to not only check the blood pressure and so forth, but tell the person you could have a rash or pain at the injection site, there's a swelling, or you can have muscle aches or joint pains. You could have fever, chills, headaches, nausea. And some people don't have anything at all, other people have all of them. They say 1 in 10 persons will have those symptoms and 9 will have nothing at all. And it doesn't matter. But what if you have those symptoms? We call those, yes, they're side effects, but we really call them adverse effects because it tells us that the vaccine is working. The vaccine is really, really, really working. And, that's important. But in Scotland, which has a population of 5.4 million people, they found that during the months they had been vaccinated, 8,000 people were hospitalized for COVID, but only 58 of them were vaccinated. What that tells us is that if you were not vaccinated in Scotland, if you didn't get a vaccine, you could be one of the 8,000. Whereas if you were vaccinated, it significantly reduces your chance of catching the virus. And I want you to look at the third bullet down. It reduces your risk of hospitalization by 94%. And after the first dose, the efficacy was 76%, rising above 90 after the second dose. Serious illness was reduced by 100%. Death was prevented and reduced by, of course, 100% prevented. What they found, which was new compared to the study, which we had not been able to answer before. When we were asked in October, November, does the vaccine prevent transmission? We said we didn't know. But they found out that one dose reduces infection and interrupts viral transmission risk by 70%. That's big. That's very, very big news. And that's what we want in St. Vincent, to be able to get our country back and so forth. Now, I want to quickly go through this because I want to tell you something about what's been happening. There has been anti-vax movements going on for centuries. When smallpox was first developed 220 years ago, people thought that this was absolutely crazy. Smallpox was killing hundreds of thousands of people around the world, but people still didn't trust vaccines. Matter of fact, throughout most of the centuries, there's been literally two types of doctors. There's been a homeopathic doctor, the doctor who typically uses a lot more herbs and a lot more natural things. And there's been we call the modern or allopathic doctor, who uses more modern x-rays and tablets and so forth. I have personally liked a combination of both, but there are some persons who are both extremes. And most of the anti-vaxxers that you see today are those people who don't believe in any of the modern sciences at all. I would tell you that, Now, one doctor in England, his name is Al Wakefield. He developed a paper published in the most prestigious journal in the world, and he linked your measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine that all of us got to autism. He said it caused autism. This was in 1998. And unfortunately, it shook the whole medical industry. It shook the whole medical industry. He said it caused autism in 12 children. However, in 2010, the Lancet had to retract the article because on the investigation, it was found that not only did his study not have the scientific control, it was a very small trial of 12 people, but he was being paid by the lawyers representing the 12 allegedly harmed kids. And that he had developed his own vaccine that he was developing to replace the MMR vaccine. And worse, that he not only retracted, he only altered the papers and so forth, it was it. Anyway, his license was taken away and he moved over to America where he was embraced. And that's how the anti-vax movement started. They are well funded. They have a lot of money and they are able to produce some of the best videos, set out these videos. I wish Shanika had some of that kind of money so that we could mount a real positive campaign to educate persons about this vaccine. But you will be receiving a lot more vaccines from this well-funded. They're now a part of QAnon. I'm sure you've heard of QAnon, who believes that Hillary Clinton kidnaps babies and eats them. Maybe many of you may laugh and think, what am I saying? But that's how they believe, you know? And it is really strange how some people believe in things. That was Andrew Wakefield published his article in 1998. And in 1999, 2000, vaccination rates just dropped. A lot of people stopped vaccinating their children. And in 2000, Gavi, the Global Vaccine Alliance, was formed with Bill and Melinda Gates. And he's pumped over $1 billion into getting mosquito nets. He's getting vaccine. I have no brief for Bill Gates. We all learn to hate people who are wealthy, who are billionaires. We're supposed to hate them. But he's given a substantial amount of money. And he has gone on with the vaccination program, much to the dislike of the anti-vax movement. So they have attacked him. They have pillaged him, and they've done. I'm not here to defend Bill Gates, but here's one of the targets that they have. And that's the strategy. Anybody who talks about vaccine in a positive way, they're going to attack them. I mean, I will tell you, Bishop, I've been receiving my own threats. I've been for no reason, because I'm speaking out and talking science. And there are lots of anti-vaxxer groups. You know, not only the Tea Party, but I've mentioned to you about the QAnon. And I'm just speeding up. Everybody remembers this picture. This is doctors, frontline doctors. They have a great scheme. They were selling vitamins, hydroxychloroquine, the same ivermectin online. They were making a lot of money, and Donald Trump was saying, yes, take hydroxychloroquine. People were ordering the vaccines. People were ordering these things online. One of those persons, the lady to the right in the glasses, she was arrested at the Capitol siege on January 6th. Arrested, you know what I mean? And what was she doing there? Anyway, the American frontline doctors, the way they make money is they tell you that vaccines are no good, buy hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin. They then put you onto an online pharmacy who deliver it to your door, of course, in America and England, and they get a piece of the sales. And there's just this vested interest. Now, I want to say that I've spoken to you about washing hands, space, physical distancing, 6 feet away, and face masks. And I'm saying hands, space, face, and we now have reached that stage here in St. Vincent Green to vaccinate. And I want to say that we believe in what we call the 3 V's, the vaccines. We need safe vaccines. We need vaccinators, and St. Vincent has the best nurses. I could assure you, they got some new needles, 22 gauge, 23 gauge needles. You don't even feel a thing. And we need in blue, voluntary vaccinees. Vaccination is not mandatory. It is a choice. And we have to take the job of educating and reaching out to you, answering your question, so you could make that choice. I want to tell you, here is a vial of the oxygen AstraZeneca. There's nothing, no metal stuff inside it, no chip in it, nothing like that. This 5 mils as 10 doses. This vial could give you 10 doses. Very important. And then I want to tell you that there's been a lot of persons who've thrown, I would consider, a lot of mud at vaccination in general. They've been doing it for years, and I want to tell you about 12 things. I call it the dirty dozen. The dirty dozen, we're addressing false claim. After this, we'll be able to open up for some questions. These are the dirty dozen. Number 1, COVID-19 vaccine sterilizes the Black woman. This is so false. This is absolutely false. They tried this with HIV disease. Bishop, I want to tell you that in 1990, I was working, just graduated in my fellowship in infectious diseases in Newark. And we spoke to the Christian community. We had all the churches in New Jersey and New York come, the Black churches. And we told them that HIV is real and we wanted persons to wear condoms. That was a strategic mistake we made, because the response we got was that if condoms are promoted, it's also going to promote the idea of fornication and adultery and so forth. And we did not initially have the support of the churches in the campaign. However, as time went along, they were the ones who comforted the sick. They were the ones who counseled the individuals who were afflicted. But I want to say, I remember standing up on the streets of Newark trying to give out condoms. And I, you know, I might say whether I regret that or not, but persons were telling me that we put holes in the condom, in the pin, we pin prick them, we did all sorts of things to them. They didn't want to take them. They thought you all are trying to prevent us from making children in the Black community. This is a design. And we failed to mount a good campaign, and we gave up. We stopped trying to do it. We kind of gave up. Well, I moved on, I moved back to New York, but they gave up. And Newark was a sad state. I'm talking about a place called Newark, not New York, Newark. With polio, they did the same thing. Polio in northern Nigeria, a Muslim priest said that the polio vaccine is designed by the Americans to sterilize the Black woman, and that it has HIV and other viruses in it, so don't take it. They stopped taking it. A few years later, there was a massive outbreak of polio. Hundreds of children died. Thousands were left paralyzed just because claiming that a vaccine has in something that sterilizes the Black woman works. It always works. It's always effective, not with everybody, it's always effective with some persons. But what I want to say is, how can sterility be diagnosed in just 3 months? We've just had 3 months of the vaccine. People have been trying to have a child for years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. How can they claim it causes sterility in just a matter of 3 months? Because it's false. Number two, I'll go quickly. They say it has a chip in it to track you. I showed you each vial has 10 doses. That means there must be 10 chips inside each vial. Because if the nurse will have to go and try and pull out each vial one at a time, she has to give out 10 doses. Or maybe all 10 would come out in one dose. There is no chip inside these vaccines, none. And when anyone questions them deeper, you know what they say? They say it's a liquid chip, a liquid chip. Yeah. Well, number three, activated by 5G. Long ago, they used to have an adjuvant called aluminum. It's an aluminum adjuvant inside vaccines. And you're still seeing them put out, the vaccine has in aluminum. It doesn't. They took these things out in 2001. But they're claiming that by taking the aluminum, it makes your body like a metallic antenna. And so therefore it will respond to 5G. But not only does the vaccine not have aluminum, there's no 5G in St. Vincent. We probably even just about a 3G, 3.5G. Number four, they also claim it has the mark of the beast. This started with smallpox. When smallpox, as a matter of fact, smallpox was, as I said, as a vaccine was invented 200 years ago. But it was not only until the 1920s that a black physician determined that you could actually apply the smallpox better by applying it with a scratch to the hand. People call that the mark of the beast. Today, the vast majority of churches say it's untrue. I know that Jehovah's Witness, at one point in time, they had banned vaccination. 1952, they reinstated it. Even other entities like the Taliban had put out a fatwa against vaccines. Today, they permit vaccination. And this one about the mark of the beast is being put out by the same people who are saying Hillary Clinton eats babies, the QAnon in America. And this one is definitely on the dirty dozen list. And it is aimed at Black people in the South of America, and they have shared it. Many of you, I'm sure, when you get something, they tell you, share it to 5 people. This is what's taking place. Number 5, they say it changes your DNA. I put in tails and horns, but it absolutely has no impact on your DNA. The virus is something that's very dangerous. The vaccine has no impact at all on your DNA. These vaccines do not have any live COVID-19 virus. They don't have the COVID-19 virus inside them. So questions, will the vaccine give me COVID? No, it doesn't have COVID-19 in it. It will prevent it. Will the vaccine make COVID come on worse? No, it will reduce hospitalization, severity, and reduce transmission. You know, and this is so important. Number 6, you say that the vaccine has bad ingredients. Again, in 2001, there were ingredients such as thermosil and aluminum. Sometimes some vaccines were made in eggs, and therefore bitter egg protein would continue. This has nothing like that. The ingredients inside this vaccine is quite pure. You have histidine. There's another one called polysorbate 80. That's what helps to make your ice cream smoother and melt less. This histidine is an essential amino acid, essential for life. There is a very, very, very small amount of alcohol in it. There's less alcohol than you would get in bread that has fermented or anything that is fermented. But it's important for disclosure for me to tell you that, you know, that's number 6. Now, number 7, the vaccine was produced too quickly and not tested long enough. Well, $18 billion was poured in. Out of this, only 11 vaccines, a handful from 176 vaccines, 4 of which are in China. Right now, there's only about 4, 5, or 6 available. There's a new one being developed in Cuba, yes, but it hasn't really come out yet. Now, each of these vaccines go through a series of tests. They go through what's called preclinical tests, which involves animal studies. People here, it went preclinical tests. What about animal studies? The animal studies are part of the preclinical studies. And then it goes through various stages. At each stage, the vaccine must pass an exam, just like going from class 1 to class 2 to class 3, it must pass before it is given. And what I want to tell you is that with the final exam to be approved, the vaccine was put to the front of the line. Nothing wrong with that. It was put ahead of other medications that were going to make you lose weight. Oh, yes, hello. Other make you lose weight, or other medication that will make you put on weight, or other medication, maybe for cancer. They put it to the front of the line because it was a pandemic. But what I want to say is that in 2005, that's when major new vaccine development started. And coming out of the SARS-1, this started 15, 16 years ago, trying to develop a new line of vaccine. And they were successful in 2018 in developing a Zika vaccine. A Zika vaccine. That's now gone on for the development of the COVID-19 vaccine using the messenger RNA, Pfizer and Moderna method. With the Sputnik, Johnson & Johnson, and the Oxford AstraZeneca, this started in 2013 after the Ebola outbreak. And they were successful in developing, using a new method of developing an Ebola vaccine in 2019. Today, there's a big Ebola, an Ebola outbreak in Guinea. Anybody could Google that, and they sent vaccines made from the same method there. So what has happened? They were able to take the Zika vaccine, take off the Zika and put in the corona. And with the Ebola vaccine, they would take away the Ebola and put in the corona. And so they have been able to develop these two lines of vaccine much quicker. Now, there are many, many other vaccines that failed, did not go the distance. These were able to go the distance because they had started on them, not this year, not last year, but since 2005 and 2013. And they were able to get a track record. And that's the reason why these vaccines were developed quicker than some of those that are still yet to come out that may take a year or 2 years to come. Now, number 8, they've said it is not good for the elderly, nor for the vulnerable, diabetics, hypertensive, asthmatics, heart disease. Well, I want to tell you, this is totally false. It is good. Matter of fact, for these persons, their immune system is, I could call it dull. It's not the best. It starts to fade. As somebody gets older, the immune system starts to get sluggish. And they're not immunocompromised where they don't have no immunity at all. They still have those T cells and B cells, but they aren't as robust. They're not as strong. And so they are the persons who really need to be vaccinated. And if anybody is holding them back, discouraging them from becoming vaccinated, we are playing with their lives. The vast majority of people who die from this disease here in St. Vincent, in St. Lucia and elsewhere are the elderly. Young people die too, but they may well have some other conditions. Or now the young people may be developing long COVID. Now, number 9, the pandemic is a hoax. It is no worse than the annual flu, and 99% of people recover. Well, COVID deaths in just this year alone is greater than 5 years of the flu. In December, COVID cases surpassed the cases from AIDS, from HIV. In December, HIV reached 100 million cases. COVID has already gone past that and going, and will probably double HIV by the end. And when they say 99% of people recover, I want you to remember the slide I showed you on long COVID. 2 months after even people were asymptomatic, they're coming down with all kind of problems, shortness of breath, headaches, chronic fatigue, brain fog, all sorts of things. Diabetes being just thrown out of control, new diabetes. Number 10, there's an alarming number of deaths. And these are deliberately and grossly inflated globally. Russia, India, Brazil, China, and Iran, and the USA are all part of a conspiracy. They're all knocking glass and part of a conspiracy to fool us. And they're not fooling me, really. Iran and the United States getting together to be part of a conspiracy. China, Russia, and India. The pandemic is real. Right now, as I said, there's still another ongoing pandemic of HIV we haven't totally solved. Number 11, positive tests are inflated as the PCR test is flawed. This is the test where we put a swab in your nose to check. They claim that the man who invented the PCR in 1992 said it should not be used for COVID. Well, this gentleman, he died in August of 2019, 5, 6, or 7 months before the pandemic even started. So how could he have said this? Did he write a letter? No, it's totally false. They make things up. And number 12, the vaccine and the vaccines are not effective. It won't stop us wearing masks, nor can they prevent transmission. When I point out to you, yes, they can reduce transmission by 17%. And the evidence is showing if persons vaccinate, if they come together in their groups, in an office, maybe in their church, in their homes, anyway, they can take off their mask because their ability to infect themselves when they are vaccinated is so significantly reduced that it is not going to happen. We are going to be facing issues of travel. Right now, only some like Israel and so forth are saying you need a passport, a vaccination passport to travel. Other countries are weighing it up. They're more busy trying to vaccinate, but they'll deal with that later on. I have no doubt persons coming to St. Vincent may well not have to go through the long quarantine if they're vaccinated. But I think that the important thing is that vaccination is going to save lives, rare lives, your lives, my life, and our relatives' lives. And especially for young people, I want young persons to know that, yes, young persons may catch it more mildly, but they're the ones who are taking it home to granny, their uncle, and their mother who has diabetes. And even the young people now, 2 to 3 months, are now seeing the effects of long COVID. LONG, COVID, those after effects, headaches, all sorts of things. And this can be prevented with vaccination. I call these the dirty dozen. And they are specially designed by individuals for some reason or the other who want to stop vaccination. Why do they want to stop vaccination? Because the vaccination isn't good. The vaccine will do something. The vaccine is an evil spirit, has the mark of the beast. Or does the vaccine actually save lives? I want to just end before we open up time that this slide here, we have this individual on the left. This person is in the midst of persons who were never vaccinated. And this person in the middle is able to spread it far and wide, left and right. Whereas this person, the same person, if they were surrounded by the people in green, right? The people in green literally protect the people who are not vaccinated from being infected. Hopefully everybody here should be in green, but this phenomenon is called herd immunity. We call it community immunity because we don't want people to feel like anyway, like goat or cows or so. It's community immunity. And we are hoping that we won't just get what we are looking as our target, 70% of our population vaccinated, which is what will create the community immunity. But at the same time, it is going to help do a lot more things. It's going to allow our economy to get back on track. It will allow us to open back up the churches, to full capacity, not just 1/3. It will allow transportation to flow and the van drivers to have probably a little better smile on their faces. But it will allow all sorts of kids to go back to school effectively, you know what I mean? And to feel safe, and teachers to feel that much more comfortable, and a host of other things. It's a matter, though, that is not just about getting the economy, it's about saving lives. And that's what I'm recommending to you. I want to say that persons who were previously positive, we recommend that some 8 weeks after, they can also receive vaccination. Being positive, the body only mounts a kind of a weak immune response. But getting vaccinated, which is designed properly to have the best form of vaccination, you are able to top up things to fill the tank. Getting the vaccine naturally, picking up the virus naturally will only give you about 1/4 of a tank. But getting full vaccination fills the tank. We recommend that. There are about 40 different centers around the country. We have vaccination on weekends at different places around the world, which we highly publicize. We have an ability to go to your homes for shut-ins or people who are requesting that. Groups, businesses, we basically are available to vaccinate persons anywhere. We do have a tray we always walk around with in case anybody has allergies, and we're always on backup in case anybody has a more serious complication. You know, and I want to say that the episode in Denmark and Europe was quite unfortunate. I expect that by the end of the week, we will get some word that there's no relationship between the vaccine and that of these episodes of clotting, and that these episodes of clotting were even far less than the normal amount of clotting that takes place in those kind of societies on a daily or weekly or monthly basis. So with that, I want to say, I know there are a number of things I haven't touched on, but I know these will come out in questions. I want to give you that broad framework. I wanted to explain to you how your immune system really is situated, how vaccines themselves work, which type of vaccines we have, and to also tell you a little bit about the dirty dozen. The last thing I want to say, though, is that there are some mutant strains out there. The coronavirus is one of those viruses that tends to mutate. And you've been hearing about the South African strain. You've been hearing about the UK Kent strain. You've been hearing the Brazilian strain. Well, I want to say that the Oxford University AstraZeneca is not so hot against the South African strain. It's not. But none of the vaccines are. South Africa is in a serious problem. And none of the vaccines are that effective against the South African strain. The UK or the British Kent strain, the Oxford AstraZeneca is quite effective. They have vaccinated 25% of their people and going, and that is the heart of the UK Kent strain. There's the UK Kent strain is also in Barbados, St. Lucia, Trinidad. We haven't detected that it's here in St. Vincent yet. And I hope it doesn't come here. But the Oxford University AstraZeneca is effective against it. I'm very, very pleased to then hear that the Brazilian strain, which is the strain I've been worried about, that Oxford AstraZeneca is quite effective against the Brazilian strain. The Sputnik is also effective against the Brazilian strain. And these are really good signs. These are the vaccines we're using. We do hope to be able to get in a small amount more of the Sputnik. The bulk of what we are utilizing of AstraZeneca, I want to put to you that it is, in my view, safe, and that the official of the Ministry of Health, CARPHA, which is the Caribbean Public Health Authority, and the World Health Organization, is that we should continue with the vaccination program. We don't want our death rate to go from 9 to even 10. And with that, Bishop, I'm open back to you for questions. I know I've taken a little while there, but I wanted to really do justice to this presentation and see if I could cover a lot of topics that people might ask questions about, but hope, so please open for questions now.
Okay. All right, so as we said previously, you have the reactions. That's the button right at the bottom. When you press on that, you would see raise hand. And we want you to just raise your hand and we'll acknowledge you. When we acknowledge you, you would then ask your question. So we trust that everybody, you have your names posted, so we would just call you and take questions. All right, so let us go. Any questions? I have Michelle. Okay, Michelle, you can unmute and ask your question. Yes, Michelle. Saw your hand first. Okay.
Yeah. Good night to everyone.
All right.
Good night to everyone. I have two questions for the doctor.
Yes.
Number one, Number one, why 18 years and over? And two, I want to know why you take a vaccine within 12 weeks.
Yes, okay, I understand what you're saying. When the initial studies were done on those vaccines last year, the approval to go ahead and start with the studies and analysis would only have been given for persons 18 years and older. And they would have been prohibited from doing it for persons under the age of 18. Now, that is, they wanted to first of all do it in adults rather than in children. This is a normal practice for certain types of vaccine. Now, at the same time, they've now, over the last month and a half, started Pfizer, Moderna, Oxford, AstraZeneca, Sputnik, they've all started studies on children, and we should have the results out by June as regards whether children, the kind of dose, whether you give it 3/4 of a dose, you give it half a dose. Those are the things. That's one of the reasons, because children have different sizes and height and ages, and so they don't necessarily always want to give the same dose. So they're doing those studies now, and they would tell us between the ages of 5 and 18 whether or not to go ahead with vaccination. Now, at the same time, some vaccines, like the space between some vaccines is 3 weeks, others is 5 weeks. With the Oxford University AstraZeneca, they had originally said about 6 to 8 weeks. But when they did further assessment, they found that after the first dose was quite effective, and that the immunity continued to grow and build, and that the timing for the second dose was best at 10 to 12 weeks rather than at 6 weeks. St. Vincent has chosen to give the second dose at 10 weeks rather than at the 12 weeks. But there was not much of a difference between them and so forth. So in that regard, if you read, you would hear about 12 weeks, but we're giving it at 10 weeks, just a little earlier, so forth, so to make sure that person receives it and there's no delay and so forth in that regard.
All right, let's have Pastor Elvin Peters.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Dr. Thompson.
Good evening.
I have three questions.
Sure.
Just want to thank you for your presentation. It was excellently presented. The first one, in terms of here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, I know that we have two types of vaccines, the AstraZeneca and the Sputnik V.
Yes.
Is there still an option where people can choose which one they would like to receive?
I would say there really isn't, because we only expect about another 1,000 doses. I'm not sure if it's going to be 2,000, about another 1,000 doses of the Sputnik. I know that there may be further attempts to try and obtain some more Sputnik, and maybe even to get maybe even other vaccines. But I want you to understand right now what's taking place around the world. There's something we call vaccine, I would call it vaccine apartheid, and I would also call vaccine nationalism. You're seeing that the countries that a few weeks ago that were doing all the vaccination were the countries in the north: China, Russia, Europe, England, and then Canada and America. And then the countries in the south, there were over 50 to 60 countries that had not and still have not administered a single vaccine. In Africa, in other places. Anyway, since that time, vaccines have been rolling out slowly. But whereas you hear Joe Biden is saying, I am going to vaccinate the American people first, and after I have finished, then I'm going to share the vaccine.
Mhm.
Now, other countries are thinking about that because they have the vaccine plants, they have laws to control, vaccine distribution, not to control the actual science of the vaccine, but they would put in big orders and order all of the vaccine they're making. So if I were to tell you that next week we could have, 40,000 doses of Johnson and Johnson, I will not be telling you the truth. If I could tell you that we have refrigerators for the Pfizer vaccine, I would not be telling you the truth. And the Pfizer vaccine in particular has some problems with, it does have some greater problem with allergic reactions in terms of anaphylactic reactions. So we're not being so keen on that. But what I want to say is that there's always going to be an ongoing attempt. I know it's a long answer to your question, because I have broadened it because you may ask me about other vaccines.
Right.
And I think what I'm trying to say is that right now, the Oxford AstraZeneca is the primary vaccine that we do have available. We will have a limited supply of the Sputnik. Maybe other attempts, but I have to tell you, there isn't a choice. I would say I want to. There are some persons who put down the name for the Sputnik, and we were supposed to have gotten the Sputnik 3 weeks ago. And during the last 3 weeks, a number of them changed their mind and went and got the Oxford University AstraZeneca because we are not going to receive the Sputnik until, I think, the 26th. So it's not too far off. It's about another week we'll receive those Sputnik. But in terms of being able to tell you, you could go in and choose anything you want, like rum and raisins or pistachio ice cream or chocolate or so. It isn't quite like that. And we did not want a person. However, I would say that I know some further attempts are being made to try and obtain additional vaccine Sputnik. There's been some discussions, I'll tell you, with Cuba, you know what I mean? But that vaccine is not quite finished yet. And it's so dynamic that in due course, in another month or two, their circumstances may well change. But I can tell you, two interesting things taking place. There have been so many cases now being published of persons who put off getting their vaccine, Pastor, or they couldn't have access to it because one was not available, and they picked up the COVID-19 and passed away. And I think that is a testimony in itself that we really do need to push it back. So I've not taken a little while to answer, but I know the nature of the question if there's a choice. And I have to answer, there isn't really much of a choice. If you are insisting on getting a Sputnik vaccine, you can indicate that and so forth, but we want to recommend that you take any of the vaccine, the first vaccine that's available to you to protect yourself so that you don't face up with this virus.
Okay.
Dr. Thompson, can I just jump in here for a little bit?
Yes.
No, hold on. Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Elliot, yes.
Elliot, sorry.
Yes.
Hi, good night, everybody. I'm Elliot
Good
Samuel,
night.
Chief Laboratory Technologist. Just to add a little bit to what Dr. Thompson was explaining. What I want persons to understand is that the Sputnik V and the AstraZeneca are both using the same technology for development. So whereas you have a different technology being used for the Moderna and the Pfizer, Sputnik and AstraZeneca are both using the same technology. As a matter of fact, I think they're both sharing information now so they can harmonize the product. So trying to choose between whether I get a Sputnik V or an AstraZeneca is really, for want of a better word, baseless. And I do agree with what Dr. Thompson has been putting forward.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much.
Okay.
Yes, sorry. Pastor Peters, go ahead.
Yes, so with the onset of the vaccines and so on, and all things being equal, we reach our target in terms of getting majority, if not all of the population, adult population of St. Vincent and the Grenadines vaccinated, will that mean that physical distancing and the wearing of masks, would that be discontinued, or is this something that you think will continue beyond that?
Yeah, I want to answer you this way, because the way you frame the question, I want to answer yes. If we achieve that 70%, which is about 50,000+ people vaccinated here in St. Vincent of the adult population, yes, we can actually achieve that. Now, in the meantime, as we are about 10% right now, and we are going up, we would want, first of all, to continue with the mask during this time, because there are too many people around you who could still be contagious, who could still be infectious. But once, just this slide up here, once you reach 70%, I believe, as an infectious disease specialist, that we won't need the mask. Now, would we still need to have good and to kind of establish that all that good hygiene we've all been doing? Yes, we still need to wash hands more. I think that will still continue. The ladies may use the hand sanitizers a little less, because, you know, to some of them, I hear them complaining, it dries out their hands a little bit and so on. But, you know, I think we will still see a lot of these activities being continued by people on a personal basis. But I firmly believe that we will be able to declare, even long before that, that we could relax on the mask. And if your whole church were to vaccinate, we could say, and if you could prove that, you know, and so forth, that within your church, you could take off masks. I mean, that might sound very strange, but that is the direction we're going in. And you could take off your mask before we've achieved that particular thing. Of course, when people come back out and they're now going into the environment and they no longer have a circumstance where everybody is vaccinated, then that won't be the case. In your prayer group, the persons in your prayer group are all vaccinated, they will be able to take off their mask 14 days after they're vaccinated. We wouldn't want you to do it immediately after you're vaccinated, but they could be able to take off their mask 14 days after they're fully vaccinated, you know? And so this is the message, and we will find out a lot more information about this, but this is the going word, and it will firm up after a period of time. So I don't know if I've answered your question properly. I've answered it in two ways. Most certainly if we reach that 70%, but even before that, you know, within a prayer group, if they come into a section of your church and everybody's vaccinated, they could do so. But in general, we would want people to continue using masks and continue the social distancing, and so right up until that time, we're able to declare that we have an aspect of community immunity.
Okay, yes, you did answer. Thank you very much. The third question is now irrelevant, so thank you for answering my two questions.
Yes.
All right, so you have ended. We're going to ask Pastor Cassius Derrick. Could you ask your questions at this time?
Okay, thank you, Bishop. Good night, everyone. I have several questions here. I think I would ask and then you would respond, and I'll just continue in that way. The first question is, can persons with sickle cell or pregnant people take the vaccine?
Persons with sickle cell are a prime front line individual. They're a vulnerable individual who definitely should take this vaccine. The virus has an ability to invade the blood vessels, and it can do a lot of damage that can induce elements of sickling and so forth. And I want to encourage all sicklers to do so, and they will be much safer if they do. Now, in the case of pregnancy, we have not encouraged persons who have pregnant, because during the various studies, they excluded persons who were pregnant. Now, I want to, for sure, persons we do not encourage vaccination during the first trimester, the first 3 months, because that's when the baby is forming. But just today, there was an article published that's going around, Bishop, showing a lady who got vaccinated in her 3rd trimester. That is, she was vaccinated 3 weeks before giving birth. Why? She was going through a condition called eclampsia or preeclampsia. This is where the placenta starts to do all sorts of problems and the blood pressure could go up and she's at risk of clotting. So because the virus could aggravate that, she chose, after discussion with her obstetrician, to take the vaccine. And they were able, she had a perfect birth, very nice, wonderful birth. And after, they were able to even test the baby and found the baby had the antibodies to the coronavirus, and the baby itself was protected from the coronavirus. This is a great news, and articles going around, the world, that the vaccine will not only protect the mother, but will protect the baby. But anybody who's pregnant, who's going to receive it, it should be done on a consent and a serious discussion with their obstetrician. So we generally would discourage it, and it was only under certain circumstances, like there is a clotting disorder. Studies are now being done to tell us more definitively when and how much and so vaccination we could do. And those results are also expected sometime in June or July, where we would have a much more definitive, scientific, professional answer for you. But that is how we approach pregnant persons at this time.
Can I just add a little?
Yes.
Right. So just to back up a little bit on the sickle cell part of it, for the persons who are sickle cell anemic, they tend to get into the sickling state when they become deprived of oxygen. They go into a hypoxic state. And we know that one of the hallmark presentation for COVID-19 disease is difficulty breathing.
Yes.
So if you are a sickle cell person and you get exposed to COVID-19 virus and you end up having COVID-19 disease, then you do not only have to battle with the ill effects of the virus, you also have to battle with that while you have a high probability of beginning to get into sickle cell distress. So, I mean, I will see vaccination working positively for persons who are sickle cell, since the vaccine in no way can induce a sickle cell crisis. For the pregnant persons, the data is showing that persons who are pregnant, if they become infected with sickle cell, with COVID-19 virus, they too seem to fall into a category where they are showing a high propensity for a severe disease and probable death. So while, as Dr. Thompson said, that the studies initially did not include for the pregnant persons, I think the pregnant persons need to weigh their option of doing versus not doing, and to be guided by their physician where the decision to take the vaccine is concerned. I just wanted to add that.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
All right. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My second question is, how long does one have to continue to wear a mask after being vaccinated?
Well, I know this question is going to recur quite a lot. Generally, a mask primarily protects the individual who's positive from transmitting the disease to somebody else. Being vaccinated, there's a low risk of you actually becoming infected. And I think we are going to have this answer sometime. But as of now, we think that, just I've been saying, if you are in the company of other persons who are vaccinated and you know they're vaccinated, you are able to really remove your mask. However, if you are going back into the general public, going onto a van, and you are meeting up with individuals who are not, you don't know if they're vaccinated, we think that you should continue the mask for the time being. And that I would say that after you have been vaccinated, we are thinking that it's about 14 days after that all this starts to really kick in. We think you're fully vaccinated. We think your tank is being filled up and that you're relatively protected. But because the vaccination, and I must say, is not 100%. Like if you have a headache and you take a pain tablet, it doesn't always kill that headache. And if you have high blood pressure, one tablet doesn't always bring down your blood pressure. So I want to point out that vaccination, and we have to be honest with you, is not 100% effective at preventing you from becoming infected. What we have to, but it's 100% effective at stopping hospitalization and stopping death. And so now I brought this slide back up because I want to really fit. You see this gentleman here who's breaking in. If he's standing outside your house, let's call him the virus, and he's watching, he could claim he's only watching. But if he's putting his leg through that door and he has put his leg in, and your pit bulls are even on the inside, you could say he's broken in. The point I'm making is that the infection may well have started. So you have not really fully prevented an infection, but it's a very mild infection. It will not become a severe infection to put you in the intensive care unit. It will not become severe that you may die. We have not seen that as a result of the vaccination. But it can be still classified as the initiation of an infection. And on the technicality, that's why we're saying that the vaccines can be 94% effective. And I went a little further in trying to point out, we still want you to continue wearing the mask for a period of time. But the ultimate goal, and some people have said, what's the point of being vaccinated if I can't take off the mask straight away? The ultimate thing is that we think that if right now, if you're in the right company of other people vaccinated, you can take off the mask. And if we reach to that particular percentage of community immunity, you will be able to take off the mask. As time goes on, we may hear other studies that may tell us, yes, you could take off the mask sooner than that, but we have to tell you what the science is saying today. And those are the actual facts right now.
Okay, thank you. My third question is, I believe you mentioned something before, but if you could go over, I would appreciate it.
Sure.
Why does a vaccine have such a short type lifespan?
The vaccine have a short lifespan? No, I don't think I said that the vaccine has a short lifespan. You're talking about why it took such a short time to develop the vaccine, you mean? Or you're talking about if the vaccine lasts in your body? What do you mean? Which one? Hello?
I perhaps you could answer both because I'm just relaying some questions.
Yes, okay. Well, first of all, with the second part, some of the evidence that we have so far is that by taking the vaccine, your immunity will last at least a year. At least a year. Remember that first slide I did? I pointed out to you that your immune system also can have some built-in memory, so that even if your antibody level starts to drop anytime your body is exposed to the virus, the B cells remember. They almost have a picture of the virus, And they say, you know, like the police have an APB out on you, and they're able to watch the virus and say, you know what? Yes, this is what that virus looks like. And they pour out more antibodies and virtually fill up back the tank. It's almost as if like it's a hybrid car. So you know, they've got some electricity. They fill back up the tank with antibodies to get the virus, because that virus, you've been exposed to that virus later on. So that we will know in due course. So right now we know that the vaccination, the immunity will last for about a year. I believe for many viruses like measles, mumps, it's lasted for decades. I believe this would last for some time. Now, I mentioned to you about mutant strains. There's a likelihood that if a mutant strain does come into your area, and they're working on developing a booster that could more specifically tackle the mutant strain. You understand? The mutant strain. Right now, those boosters have been worked on feverishly because the Brazilian strain and the South African strain and the Kent strain are causing problems. Well, the Kent strain is causing a lot of problems in Europe. That's why Italy has locked down again yesterday. That's why France is locking down. You know, those countries are really going through a tough time. And I see it's just strange that in Brazil, in northern Brazil, in areas where a lot of Amerindian and people of color live, those areas are hard hit, the hardest hit in Brazil. And again, a lot of this is because sometimes, Bishop, we are subjected to these rumors. Don't wear a mask because they will make it worse, or don't do this. You know, it has the mark of the beast and all those other things. Now, with the other question, in terms of why the vaccine took so short, I don't think it took short. I mean, I was trying to make the case that with a couple of those vaccines, they were working on those since almost 2005, not for corona, but for other potential viruses. And so the vehicle, the model that they were developing was an excellent model. Out of that model, Nobel Prizes have been won. And they have developed new vaccines already that are in use. And it's only a matter of then substituting in order to now get the, it's like changing a tire, so to speak, if I could put it that simply. But in addition, a lot of money has been put into it, and each stage has been tested such that a number, the majority of vaccines have not made it. It's only the best, the very best have come through. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. Out of 176, you only have 11. More will come, but I had expected about 30 vaccines from now. Some of the biggest companies in the world, Bayer Aspirin, their vaccine failed. It's a company in France called Sanofi. That's why the French are so upset. Their pride, this vaccine company that produces all the flu vaccines, that one, their vaccine attempts failed. Another one in England, you know, failed, and several around the world have failed. You know, dozens of them around the world have failed. You know, and so I'm just putting it to you that to us, it has not really taken a long time. But I think the publicity that is too short, that I'm taking a little while with this. If you develop a bronchitis, a cold, and the doctor puts you on antibiotics, how long does the doctor put you on antibiotics for? I would say the doctor might put you on the antibiotics for about 7 to 10 days. Whereas, and I'm going to be careful, I say, if you have a cancer, they have to follow you with the cancer for 1 year and more and going back all the time. You understand? In case the cancer comes back. So cancer therapy and medications for cancer, we have to follow them for a long time. But with upper respiratory infections, it's usually a much shorter period of time. And so the studies and so was much shorter too. And I don't know if I've really gotten through in that particular message. For infections and so forth, you know, really and truly, this is not really an exceptionally short period of time. I think, you know, the very best vaccines have come through on top, and they have been analyzed every single stage of the way. And most of it, they've been built on 15 or so years of work done, which has produced results in the Zika and Ebola vaccine, and now has further produced more results in getting corona vaccines. And I think that's very important.
All right. The person just gave me some clarification there.
Oh,
They are speaking about the manufacturer's expiration date.
Oh my gosh! Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you know, vaccines. Oh gosh, I missed it. Sorry about that. I should have picked that one. Vaccines typically last for about 6 months, and so the vaccines we have will expire in June. You know, and you know, we expect to have other batches and so forth long before that, which would then expire another 6 months. We can't afford to run out a vaccine, but vaccines are extremely difficult to obtain, right? Extremely, and I know the Prime Minister is working extremely hard along with the CMO in terms of ensuring that vaccines are here in this country.
Okay, my next question is, are the vaccines being given out still in their trial period?
No, absolutely not. And this is something people want to say, you're getting an experimental jab. They love to say that. The anti-vaxxers love that. You're getting a vaccine. You're not getting an experimental jab. They would have, and I don't know why these terminologies are used. I don't know why people are trying to convince other people not to take the vaccine. Bishop, if you personally feel convinced you don't want to take the vaccine, but why go around and campaign and tell people don't take a vaccine? If you take the vaccine, I vex with you. You better not take no vaccine. You know what I mean? That is what's taking place. People are being cajoled. People are being bullied. People are being asked not to take it or they won't get. Elderly people are being told, I ain't bringing no food for you. Why? Why is that taking place for someone who does not want to face the virus? You know what I mean? Why are we equating the virus is better than the vaccine? It can't be. No, as I'm talking there, I kind of forgot your question. Sorry about that. But the question again was what?
You answered it. I asked if the present vaccines are on their trial period.
No. So they had a period of study, and the study, these vaccines must go through something called preclinical animal studies. Then they go through phase 1, which assesses the actual safety aspects. Then they go through phase 2, which tells us a lot about the efficacy. Then it goes through phase 3, which tells us more about the efficacy and the safety. And the phase 3, Bishop, is something they call double-blind placebo-controlled studies, right? They usually, phase 3 trials usually have 3,000 people. Do you know what happened? They got 30,000 plus or minus people instead, volunteers. And they would ask them, the patients don't know if they are receiving the vaccine or they're receiving sugar water. And the doctors and nurses who are giving it, they don't know either. That's why they call it double blind. And placebo is the sugar water. Some getting sugar water, some getting the vaccine. And they assess who picks up the infection. They monitor them very closely. And the AstraZeneca was one of the most closely monitored because all these patients. Do you know what they found? After the end of the studies, they realized that some persons had died. Some persons had died. So then, when they opened up the envelopes, they found that The persons who had died were the individuals who had received the sugar water. But the persons who had lived and hardly picked up any cases of the coronavirus were those who were vaccinated. From those calculations, that's why they're able to come up with 90-something% and so forth. You understand? And if anybody in the vaccine who were vaccinated had died, the study would have failed. They would not have approved the vaccine. For approval of the vaccine, they needed to absolutely show, one, there was no deaths. Two, that hospitalization and having to go into the intensive care unit and being able to have to be put on a mechanical ventilation had been prevented or reduced. And that they also were able to show a number of other things that we look for. And so that phase of the study, after the study, they send for emergency approval. Now, emergency approval is not because they're giving them a temporary approval, you know. The emergency approval is in the pandemic, we're applying for an urgent, emergent means also urgent approval, because our study is showing that our vaccine is saving lives. That's where emergency approval comes in. Our vaccine is saving lives compared with those who are not vaccinated. Now, I want to tell you something. After the vaccination trial is finished, they go to those people who got the sugar water and they said, you did not receive the vaccine, but the other people who received the vaccine did better. We are now going to offer you to get the vaccine. And the vast majority of those persons went ahead and got the vaccine too, because that's the ethics of it all. Everyone should know there was a syphilis study in Alabama, in a place called Tuskegee, in 1930s going on to almost the 1960s. After the study had finished, they didn't tell the participants anything. They let them continue with their syphilis for decades. The syphilis was given to their wives. Syphilis was passed on to their children. And as a result, it was a major, major disaster and has affected the Black community worldwide up to today. I won't tell you, in New York, I saw one of the descendants of that particular study as an infectious disease specialist. They came to my office. The son had syphilis too. He had not only syphilis, he had the fourth final stage of syphilis, something we call quaternary syphilis. It made me almost cry because there was nothing I could do for him. And so the ethics of it all, I've branched off a little bit, but the ethics is so important in studies and so forth. And those persons who were given the sugar water were eventually vaccinated with the vaccine to protect them, not to leave them and pretend and tell them, go ahead, you know, everything will be all right, like the syphilis trial. And I am saying to you that right now, we are vaccinating people. We still have to keep records by international law. International law says you have to keep records. There's no other medication that you have to do. You have to keep records on vaccines. And we're keeping records all the time and have them available in case any problems or so will develop in the future. So I want to end with that there. Thank you.
Okay, Pastor, you will come back. So let's just give Sister Bunting Williams a chance. Let her ask her question. Then we have Sister Olivier, and we could take one or two more after they finish.
Good night. I will be asking questions on Facebook. Someone was listening to Panel Campbell's program, and
Yes.
he said, if you are planning to get pregnant, should you hold off on the vaccine?
If you're planning to get pregnant, I'm going to answer that in several ways because I believe you should hold off on the vaccine for now if you are really planning to get pregnant. Another way would be to plan to get pregnant a little later and take the vaccine now. You understand? You understand? So you could put off the planning to get pregnant for, let's say, about 3-4 months so that you can get vaccinated and be totally protected before you become pregnant, because you could run into the virus during the time you are pregnant too. And we always say, this is not a question for me, really. This is a question that we believe you should discuss with your obstetrician and gynecologist so that they could have a more personal one-on-one discussion with you and advise you on a number of other questions depending on the urgency of why you're going to get pregnant, because I know planning for pregnancy, is a very sensitive thing. And sometimes, those urges and the hormones and everything like that are all there, and other reasons. Somebody whose hair, your husband may be here and has to travel, and so if you put it off, he's not going to be here. He's a sailor or something like that, but he may still be here. But there are all sorts of reasons. I think these are matters to be discussed with your obstetrician and gynecologist. It may not be, my answer may not be adequate on this few seconds and minutes on a Zoom call and so.
The other question, is it the fact that fetus of aborted babies are used to produce the vaccines?
Absolutely not. Now, I think that I could tell you that I like to think of Elliot, you want to come in?
I want to jump in that, Jim. This is
Yes. Elliot, you take that question. I'll come in after, please. You go ahead with that.
That's amazing. That's amazing. The technology that is being used now, and I want to say, as a scientist, nothing new is being created under the sun. What we are doing here is that we are mirroring natural biological processes, things that occur in your system naturally, and we are just doing it for the added benefit. So within your cells, within your natural cells in your body, there's a little organelle called a ribosome that decodes a protein molecule that is called, well, it's a nucleic acid molecule that is called messenger RNA. And all scientists are doing is that because they have understood how messenger RNA works, they can now synthesize that biomolecule in a laboratory by placing the oligonucleotides in the specific positions to end up with a code that is going to produce the protein for the virus that have already been decoded. So for the Pfizer-BioNTech and the Moderna, you are being given the messenger RNA, and the messenger RNA is encapsulated in a lipid bilayer to protect it on its way to deliver that payload to the cell. Otherwise, it's going to disintegrate before it gets to deliver the payload. The vaccine that we're using here, which is the AstraZeneca and the Sputnik 5. The Sputnik 5, they're using a host virus approach where they're using an adenovirus from a chimpanzee that has been, again, modified using recombinant DNA technology, where they have removed a part of the genome and they have added the genetic information to make a spike protein for COVID-19 virus. That information about the fetuses of aborted babies being used, that is a fallacy. We are not growing viruses, and even when they were growing viruses, they were using eggs, chicken eggs to grow virus. They are not growing viruses because they're not using that old technology where they were using attenuated viruses. They are now using a molecular approach where they're sending information to the cell. and having your cells in your body make a piece of the virus, and that triggers your immune response. So don't be led astray by that information. That is totally false.
Okay, is it
Well,
it's Dr. Elliot Samuel, right?
It's not doctor. It's just I'm the chief lab technologist with a honors BSc.
Okay, Mr. Samuel. I know right now in America, the Catholic Church, they have asked people to desist from taking the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. I think that is what that's why they asked that question, because they claim that the makeup of that vaccine, part of it was from the, what do you call it, the fetuses. So
okay, so
I'm
yeah.
not sure if
Yes,
you know more.
if I could just come in here too. Now, I like to think of myself as a virologist myself. My first job in the UK was working in a virology lab where we actually, to identify the viruses that were causing infections, we had to grow them in what Elliot was talking about, in egg serum and in primary monkey kidney cells. You have to have some very pure cells to grow these viruses. You can't just grow them anyhow. And you can get these cell lines and so forth from manufacturers in order to grow them. And then from there, you look at it under a microscope. Well, the interesting thing is that those kind of things have phased out to some degree, the testing I'm talking about, because we now have PCR, which is able to better identify what type of virus is there rather than having to grow it and look at it under a microscope. And so the job I used to do in England, I think it is a little obsolete now. Now, with Johnson & Johnson, yes, way back in 1955, in order to create cell lines, they would have had a termination, not that was something that was a voluntary. This was an aborted fetus that basically was from a very traumatic type of event. And since that time, they would have developed a series of cell lines that would have come down the age. And I think that what the Catholic Church is saying, they don't know if from the 1955, the generations and generations and generations and generations for the last 70 years is in some way linked to anything that might exist today. They don't have a chain to say if it is or if it is not. Because they don't know, therefore they're not sure. And their objection to that sort of thing means that business a choice, they would prefer a Pfizer or Moderna and things of that nature. I am convinced that there is no linkage in relation to these particular cell lines. And I said the Catholic Church is only saying, we don't know either. And because no one can prove to us, therefore, I think that's the case. And I think that is the real honest view. But it's not that the virus and so forth is made in any way. Sometimes they do the testing to see if the coronavirus itself would respond to certain medication. They have to grow the coronavirus in some of these cell lines. So they would then give a certain amount of medication and see how it responds, if it kills it. They might give a little higher dose and see if it kills it. They might give another higher dose and see if it kills it. You know what I'm saying? And what we're talking about, though, is that in the vaccine, there is no coronavirus, period. You understand? There's no attenuated or live or mashed up or killed coronavirus in any form. There is something protein that looks a little bit like the spike protein on the coronavirus that they would have attached to this adeno. And I want to say, when my brother Elliot would have talked about a chimp, this carrier is an adenovirus that can infect and give a mild infection to a chimp, but cannot infect a human. A very mild infection. It's not when they say a chimp adenovirus, it isn't something that's been developed inside a chimp or has come from the chimp. It can only cause a mild infection, upper respiratory tract infection, mild cold in a chimp, but cannot really cause any infection in a human. And they've deliberately used that because the chimp, and you may disagree, may have some genetics similar to that of human. So it's the best way, rather than doing it in a rat or doing it in something else, the chimp, infecting the chimp is a better model than infecting a rat. You know what I'm saying? So the discussion of this may not be totally clear, but just reiterating that in terms of the Catholic Church, they are unsure. They want a traceability of generations, but you want to trace your roots back to Châteauvieux, but there's a couple of people missing in between. You can't properly trace it, but someone said that, yeah, Châteauvieux is related to you or something. So, they want to see a full tracing and they're not able to get a full traceability, they're saying. So they're unsure. And on that basis, they're making those particular pronouncements. I believe that most other churches are saying that the benefits of this particular virus is so important that that is what is absolutely paramount. And that in terms of linking it to any sort of fetal tissue, while the claim from the various processes and manufacturers is that it's not the case, and they have only used those mainly for testing, that I think that it's something that we'll probably continue as a discussion. We're convinced and want to encourage everybody to take the vaccine and not to use that as a reason to deny themselves the protection that they need.
All right, Ronald, we could go ahead and let's
If
take two more,
people
spread
have
it
the
around.
virus and recover need a vaccine, why are they using the blood of people who have recovered for convalescent plasma?
Yes. Now, if this is one methodology. I showed you a slide of some of the treatments with vaccines, right? I showed you a slide with some of the treatments, and it is true that if I could just find it, I can't find it, but there are some treatments that involve, here it is. Remember I told you about monoclonal antibodies? There are some special monoclonal antibodies that are made by two companies. One is Regeneron, one is Eli Lilly. They're very expensive. And they essentially are kind of a man-made antibodies. That's what Donald Trump got. And then at one point in time, they were trying to utilize convalescent plasma in the early stages of the infection because they did not have much else. They had no medication, they had no vaccine. Monoclonal antibodies was not yet developed. And I would say that monoclonal antibodies are the next generation of convalescent plasma. So early on, they would try and collect plasma. It's a very difficult process. You got to look at blood type. You got to look at this. You got to look at that. You got to look at a lot of things. And it's probably not one of the best methods because you can have a lot of reactions and so forth. Convalescent plasma in the early stage of the infection may have been used. Monoclonal antibodies superseded it, but are very expensive. We don't have any of those here in St. Vincent, period. And essentially, that's why we are creating antibodies a different way, a cheap way, a very cheap, a very inexpensive way by giving a free vaccination on the deltoid that's generating the antibodies inside your body. so that it's able to fight the virus that way. Convalescent plasma would help and helped in the early stages, and monoclonal antibodies still around. They ain't using convalescent plasma that much anymore and so forth.
Just to add, because I think they were asking why. When you're exposed to a pathogen and your immune system responds, it responds by producing antibody as well as recording the memory. Now the antibodies are found in the plasma, and I think that's why, for example, when they had the Ebola outbreak, that's how they were able to help a lot of persons who were suffering from Ebola by giving them the plasma from persons who would have survived Ebola. And as Dr. Thompson rightfully said, it was an early approach, but now we have a vaccine. We can actually trigger your immune system to produce your own antibodies, so we don't have to give you plasma from a survivor. We can trigger your system so that your system is now prepared to encounter that virus and to remove it early if and when you are exposed to the active virus.
Thank you, Elliot.
Will the vaccine reverse the effects of long-term COVID?
You know something? That is one of the big debates. There's been several articles we've been reviewing, and they're saying the answer to that is yes, but I don't think there's enough evidence to say it yet. I mean, I would love to pronounce yes, it is, but we have to be scientific based, and I've got to be honest about this process. There's a lot of articles coming and saying what we call anecdotal evidence that vaccination is reversing, but it's too early to say because we're only into 3 months of vaccination. So those people whose symptoms have disappeared, we have to wait longer, 6 months, to see if their symptoms reappear. But so far, those who've received it, it doesn't seem as if it's reappearing. But I believe that in another month, 2, we could answer that question again. And I'm hoping that the answer is going to be a more resounding, confident yes. Right now, I'm able to say it seems so. It very much seems so. And for young persons in particular who are likely to pick up long COVID, be asymptomatic 2 months later, have pain in their fingers, have brain fog, where just in a minute they just stop thinking, just lose their memory for a second, anxiety, all sorts of different, shortness of breath, chronic fatigue. I believe that it will be a significant form of treatment for long COVID. And persons, that's why we're encouraging persons who have been positive 8 weeks after, please go and get your vaccination too, so as to make sure we can have a strong chance of reducing long COVID. It's a great question.
Okay, Sister Ronald, just take one more and then we give some others a chance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where is the research to show that people who contract the virus after taking the vaccine will not get very sick and die?
Where the results? Yes, all you have to do is probably Google real world data Scotland, yes, and England. What has happened is that there are several countries, let's say Israel, United Arab Emirates, England, that have gone ahead and done a substantial amount of vaccination. During the studies, they would have been talking about 30,000 people. They're now talking about 20+ million people. And I want to say again, by international treaty, the only medication that people have to document every reaction. If somebody has a rash, every week, this government has to send in to the World Health Organization a report on vaccination. And they've been doing that for the last 40 years. And so we will know, but in addition, the records that are kept, some records are kept in even greater detail to monitor people. It's no longer a study, it's data monitoring. So it isn't experimental, it's data monitoring, and they're finding that nobody vaccinated needs to go into hospital. They don't have to go in because, severe illness has been prevented. Death has been prevented. It doesn't mean that they haven't picked up a mild infection in a very small percentage, as I've pointed out to you, right? But they haven't gone to severe cases and so compared to those individuals who have chosen not to become vaccinated. And that's why I want to encourage your entire congregation, Bishop, that please, you know, for their sake, for their family's sake, please become vaccinated. You know, the evidence is really there. I know with all the things that are said, everybody's getting, you know, on Facebook and people bombarding you and telling you all kind of things. Why are they doing that? You would ask, why is Gerald Thompson here doing this? Well, you know, I'm not getting paid or so. The Ministry of Health is not paying me. I took a Hippocratic oath. I will never recommend a poison or anything that could do anybody any harm. And I cannot do that. I've never done that. And so there isn't no mark of the beast that's possessed me, making me telling people to take a vaccine. It is not the case. And I have had the ability to travel to Kenya, to Nigeria, to many different parts of the world where I've seen disease at its height. And because of inaction, because of slow thing, because of rumors, many persons died. And I sometimes wonder if the people who spread these rumors are laughing, because I believe that they are culpable for some of the deaths. I shouldn't say that on this program, but I believe that, you know, if they convince people not to take the vaccine when they should, I think that they are culpable. And I'm sorry about that. You know, I get sometimes a little emotional with these things, you know. Please go ahead, please.
Dr. Thompson, before you go ahead,
Yes.
request for the empirical data that supports real world effectiveness. I also want the person asking the question to look for themselves at the UK data. What was happening in the UK prior to the rollout of the Oxford AstraZeneca. Over 15 million persons in the UK received the vaccine. And today the UK is moving back to some semblance of normalcy. Schools are reopening, persons are going back out to work. So look at the empirical data for yourself.
Well said. Yes, well said.
All right.
Thank you.
Let's have Sister Olivier. Your question.
Okay, good night, everyone. Dr. Thompson, this is one of the questions that you will have to try to help us with. Even while I was sitting here tonight, someone sent me one of those clips. And so I'm going to ask you a question that a lot of people have been asking, and
Yes.
probably it has scared them. Okay. So I read that I forget who was the well-known doctor they said who said it, that everybody who has been injected with the vaccine is legally a GMO. The reason why they are a GMO is because the genetic material from the virus was fused with the human genes, and that stays in the body. And so I had to go and look up on the internet, of course. If the mRNA integrates in your genes, it stays there and can get into your reproductive organs, and your children will be GMOs. Could you please explain to me if and how that happens?
Right. Now, that's an excellent question, Adam. And it's the perfect example of an individual. Now, I think somebody's trying to answer the question for me, you know? I think that I want to bet, well, maybe not the case, that at the end of that question, they would tell you to pass it on to 5 people to share it. Maybe they didn't in this occasion. But I think Mr. Samuel pointed out before that there are, yes, I know, there are 2 vaccines called the Pfizer-BioNTech and the Moderna vaccines, which are messenger RNA vaccines. And they do not enter anywhere near the nucleus, the part of the cell which produces proteins is in the cytoplasm, and they absolutely don't have any impact at all on the nucleus. Instead, they're able to produce something looking like the spike protein, which artificially it looks like that of the virus, and so triggers an immune response. Similarly, in the Oxford AstraZeneca or the Sputnik or so vaccines, they use a different method. And I think the person who's trying to make that thing is mixing things up. They don't even know really what they're saying. But that too does have not any impact on the nucleus. There is no change whatsoever in the DNA to cause sterility. When a vaccine is approved, it's usually in any country approved by the scientific council. Then it goes, like in America, it goes to the FDA, then it goes to CDC. In Canada, the same thing. Canada don't say, well, since America approved it, we're gonna approve it too. They go through the same process. In England, in Germany, the World Health Organization would have gone through the process too. They would never approve anything that causes sterility. They would never approve anything that changes any DNA. I must tell you that I know that by claiming that it causes sterility and changes your DNA, it works. I was in front of the financial complex and a lady came up, a lady I know, and she felt, Bishop, I don't know if I'm able to say this or there, she felt my bottom. But she was feeling my bottom to see if I had a tail. You understand? And this is where some persons are caught by this, because it is easy to believe that somebody will give you something and you will grow a tail and you will grow horns and it will sterilize you. I'm telling you that for generations. During HIV, polio, I mentioned polio earlier on, and for a long time, anytime vaccines come up, and the people who don't want vaccines around, mainly what we call the homeopathists, people who want to more sell you a herb and sell you some other, and those things are good, you know. But I'm talking about the ones who will tell you don't take any medication whatsoever. Don't get no CAT scan, don't get no MRI, don't get no modern stuff. Stick with me. I have a nice portion to give you. I have something that will fix you up. Don't bother with them. Just pay me $100 and I will fix you up. They want to make some money, and the way which they do it, they always bring up something will make you sterile, something will make you there. And sadly, there are some persons who will believe this because these things tend to make them a little scared. It's confusing, and they would see a lot of things like this coming all the time, so that this person has totally mixed things up. And, you know, sometimes going through and deciphering it and trying to explain something that totally is untrue sometimes gives a little bit more credence to it too. But I'll let Elliot come inside here, Elliot, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And, yeah.
No, it's amazing how a little bit of knowledge can do good and it can do bad as well. Now, some people, they go to the internet and they dig for information and they find information, but the applicability of the information is what they don't understand. Now, molecular is a very diverse field, and there's a lot of research that is going on a molecular level. One of the things that is being championed now, it's being researched a lot, is what they call gene therapy. And in gene therapy, the objective is for persons who have, let's just say you have the inability to produce insulin. You have type 1 diabetes. They're researching the probability that they can now replace the portion of your gene that is responsible for making insulin by an effective part. And they can do it in a way where you continuously make that insulin. So they're looking at how they can modify your DNA and keep your DNA that way so you continue to make insulin. To get that done, they use a virus again, or in some cases by inserting they use a virus to deliver the DNA and to have it integrated into your DNA as a therapy. Now, the vaccine manufacturers, one of the things that has to be done when they're making vaccine and they're using the viral vector approach, the virus has to be, one, replication deficient, as in the case of AstraZeneca. The virus that they use, that adenovirus that is used to deliver the payload, that virus is, one, replication deficient, and two, that virus in no way, the DNA that the virus delivers in no way integrates into your DNA. And those are two criteria that must be met. So persons are seeing information on the internet where gene therapy speaks about using viruses to deliver DNA that integrates into your DNA for therapeutic purposes. And they are confusing that information with the creation of vaccines. So that has to be understood. The second thing, and I think Dr. pointed this out already, where he is saying that for the Moderna and the Pfizer, the approach where they're using the mRNA stays out in the cytoplasm. It doesn't enter the nucleus. And once it doesn't enter the nucleus, there is no way it can integrate into your genome. For the vaccines that do use DNA, which is the Sputnik 5 and the AstraZeneca, the DNA that is delivered, it only translates into the RNA, and the RNA move out of the nucleus into the cytoplasm for protein synthesis. It doesn't in no way integrates into your DNA. You can research the information. It's there on YouTube. You can dig further. But the important thing is how you interpret the information. And persons are missing the point, and they are sending bad messages across to deter people from taking the vaccines.
Well, you know, Elliot, I know there were some other questions there, but I want to just end up with saying this too, that for the lady who asked that question, I don't know, you sound a very healthy lady. I don't know if you have any underlying illnesses, but I want to say that once again, for those persons who are a little bit more elderly or have elderly persons in their home, for those persons who are diabetic, hypertensive, those with heart disease, those with sickle cell, those with chronic arthritis and so forth, you are at a high risk of catching this particular virus. The 9 persons who've died here in St. Vincent have all been in this category, albeit the youngest person being 42 years old. The majority of them were a lot older. And if somebody is coming and telling you, go and make friends with the virus, stay away from the vaccine, then they are not telling you the truth. As a matter of fact, they may be giving you advice that could injure you, that could do even more than injury. And I want you to take heed of that particular type of information, because I don't know if it's a friend who's sending you that, or someone who loves you who's sending you that, but I think that clearly it's not the best advice that you should take. So let me go to the next question there, please.
Okay, Sister Olivia, you finished?
Yes,
all right.
I see a lot of hands up, so I won't ask anymore.
Okay, let's have Sister Mandela Peters.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mandela. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Thompson and Mr. Samuel, for the presentation and for answering all of the questions. I have one question. It's in relation to the uptake of the vaccine, and we've noted that it's slower than had been expected. my concern is we have received about 45,000 doses of the vaccine. So far, about 8,000 persons have been vaccinated. Would it affect us if at the end of the period, by the time the vaccines have expired, if the uptake remains slow or low, would that affect us in getting more doses of the vaccine? And if that is the case, I think that is a situation that needs to be made known. I think needs to be made known to the public so that they're aware that it's important if they desire to be vaccinated that they should get vaccinated soon, because I know a lot of people saying, oh, I don't mind taking it, but let me wait and see. So I think that needs to be clear if that is the case. But the question is if that would affect us in getting more doses and how many more doses we get in the future.
Yes. I would say that we had received 40,000. We, as part of our good neighborliness, we gave 5,000 to Grenada because Grenada did not have any. And when they do receive theirs in due course, they would give it back to us or we would share it with other person. A lot of effort. I would tell you that some folks from Mustique who were trying to also get a certain amount, but they've been told, they had $1 million, they've been told that they are unable to purchase the oxygen AstraZeneca directly. They're from the UK, so they thought they had some contacts, and that's also understandable. So we have 35,000. We do also, because St. Lucia's smaller, I must tell you, we had also planned, I think it's been executed already, have another 5,000 go over to St. Lucia to help them out. They did not have their 40,000. They had a small amount, and they basically, even though they are going a little faster than us, we are still willing to share. We would have gotten our first 5,000 doses from Dominica, as you recall, and 20 doses, that's 40 doses for 20 persons for the Sputnik. So we do expect more. What we found is that sometimes when you expect vaccines, they may come a week later or may come a month later or could come even longer than that. Right now, Europe is crying out because their vaccination rates are like around 4%, 5%. Our vaccination rate is approaching 10% for the size of our population. They're going 4%. There are countries of the world that have not had a single dose of vaccine yet. Now, Italy banned the exportation of the same Oxford AstraZeneca to Australia sometime a week and a half ago, saying they're not going to allow it. If it has to stay inside Europe. And there is a lot of pullback and a lot of, I would say there isn't that Christian concept of sharing that should take place. People are grabbing. And so in relation to your question, there is a possibility, yes, that even though we've shared with Grenada and we've shared with St. Lucia again, that we could face a time when there's a period where we don't have any at all. But that's a possibility that where we expect there might be a delay and there could be a gap. I do expect that we will receive, it's always a matter of timing. But if we vaccinate now, we are able to protect people at least with their first dose, which is proven to be highly effective even with the first dose. So we're trying to get people to at least get the first dose. I think that we won't run. I think we will get through this 35,000 and we will be able to administer it. I think that we are seeing the approach of going out into the communities, and we're realizing that there are a lot of people who are afraid to even come out of the house because of the COVID. And they're not going to clinics, and we really have to go to their homes and bring them their vaccination. And that's what the process we are also doing. But people are still coming to the clinics. Yes, I think that it is slower than what we had expected when compared to Barbados and some of the other islands and so. But this often is a story of the tortoise and the hare. It's not always necessarily how fast you're going, but that you're going steadily. I would prefer if we go much faster, but if we go in quite steadily, that's also good. But I do want to take your admonition in terms of warnings with that. Please, individuals who have the ability to walk into a clinic, even if you're hesitant, go there and chat with somebody. You know, you could call up one of our officials in the Ministry of Health, but you know, you at least you could go to one of these centers and speak to one of the nurses, speak to one of the persons, ask any additional questions, sit down for a little while, pause, ponder it, you know, and then make your decision. If you walk away, that's fine. There's always another opportunity to come back again. We want you to be comfortable. They're going to check your pressure. They're going to check your temperature. They are going to ask you a few questions about whether you have allergies or anything like that, and they're going to make you feel very comfortable. And I'll tell you something, you won't even feel that needle. So for those persons who are afraid of the needle, I tell you something, I didn't feel a thing. And so I'm encouraging you to really come forward. Don't worry so much about whether we are going to run out or not. We are going to be making the national effort at the highest level to have vaccine for people. The sad thing is if the vaccine comes and persons are not using it, that would be a shame. That if persons were to die, a person dies because they did not go and get vaccinated 3, 4, 5 weeks before they actually died, especially if they died from COVID. So I want to let that.
Okay.
Doctor, if I can just add.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add a little piece there. Just to say that we are monitoring closely the expiration dates on the product. And if it comes, just to answer specifically the question that was asked, if it comes to a point where we figure that the product may expire, we are going to give those to our neighboring islands, because we are actually fighting a very close collaborative fight where COVID-19 is concerned, and some of the islands do not have the quantities that they require. So we are going to give those away if it comes to that, and we will replenish the stocks with new vaccines.
All right.
I commend that initiative.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. As we getting ready to take the question from Brother Kurt Bunton, there's someone who asks, where do you register for the Sputnik vaccine? I think you said something about it before.
Yes. You could register. I mean, you could basically call in on a hotline and so forth and things like that, or you could go to one of the clinics. You know, you could go to one of the clinics, a polyclinic or so, and you can register in that regard. That's okay. You know, you could do that.
Okay. All right, Brother Bunton.
Good night, gentlemen.
Yes, good night.
Brethren, ladies and gentlemen, good night. Dr. Thompson and Brother Samuel, this is Samuel. You mentioned briefly, I think, or if not in total, about the ingredients that is contained in the vaccine. The question is related to, are there persons who might have allergic reaction or who should be concerned with certain antibiotics with comparison to the ingredients, who should abstain from the vaccine, or if they should?
Yes, I'll tell you the truth. There is something we call the Green Book, right? And this is a Green Book published through the Ministry of Health in England that talks about allergies, allergic reactions, and so forth. And it is true that the Pfizer and the Moderna may have a slightly greater propensity and chance of causing a particular type of allergy called an anaphylactic shock. They say about 1 in a million cases can take place. These usually are individuals who have to walk around with a substance called adrenaline or an EpiPen, epinephrine. And they know that they get this anaphylactic shock, but they're able in those few seconds to give themselves their own injection that they keep in their bag or their pocket, and that saves their lives. You understand? Now, anytime Pfizer and Moderna are being given, they always have a tray ready with the same adrenaline, epinephrine to give in case one of these things occur. And they basically, you know, if there's going to be an allergy of that nature, it starts within a matter of 2 minutes. And if it hasn't occurred by 20 minutes, it's not going to occur. In the Green Book, it says that if somebody is has anaphylactic shock and they are concerned about taking a Pfizer Moderna, what they should do instead is to take the AstraZeneca, because the incidence of allergic reactions in the AstraZeneca is non-existent. So, but here in St. Vincent, we have not been taking any chances whatsoever. We still have the adrenaline tray, we still have the epinephrine, and just in case, we make sure we keep individuals for 15, 20 to 30 minutes sitting down at the clinic or wherever it is to make sure, and we have a monitor to watch them to see if they have any kind of allergic reaction. And we have not really had anything. We had one person who fainted and so forth and things like that, and a couple of things like that, but nothing of any note. So I want to say that we always ask about allergies and we try to solicit, but we have not seen any of these major anaphylactic reactions. We cater for it, and we absolutely make sure if it does occur, we have to report it to the World Health Organization, and we haven't had to do so at this point in time. If it does occur, we will have the professional experience to deal with these particular type of conditions. And I'm really pleased that we haven't had any of these things yet.
Okay, before I invite Reverend Denny to ask a question, there's one that is in the chat. Dr. Thompson, after we are fully vaccinated, do we get a card or some sort of certificate to indicate that we are? For example, can it be carried like your bank card anywhere in the world you travel? Thank you.
Yes, even after your first dose, we give you a card and we give you an indication of when your second dose is going to be. And when the second dose is given, the same card is given back to you, folded up, and you can carry it anywhere. I have seen in Israel where they're developing what's called a vaccination passport. There's going to be a suspicion that I, as Gerald Thompson, could get a whole packet of these vaccination cards, Bishop, and come down to the church and start to give out some of your members a vaccination card and write in something nice to them, you know what I mean? And say they're all vaccinated, the whole church is vaccinated, so that you all can have fellowship and prayer meetings without wearing a mask. I could probably come and do something like that, but you know, that wouldn't be right. So, you know, they will look to try and safeguard that someone else isn't doing that and manufacturing cards. So people go to America, hey, look my card, I got a card, and they haven't had a single vaccine. So it's something that's going through some thought. Boris Johnson has been speaking about it. Anthony Fauci has been speaking about it. It's a bit premature right now, but you will have that card that we have produced and you can show it. But right now, it is not it. Now, I do believe that soon there's a possibility that anyone coming to St. Vincent, that the number of days they have to spend in quarantine may be curtailed or reduced if they were to show an authentic vaccination card. But the process of doing that, I think, will need a bit more work. And I'm hoping that similar, I have 3 daughters in the United States, and I haven't seen them for a long, long time. Luckily, you know, well, I see them on Zoom and WhatsApp messages, but I would love to travel myself. This may not be the right time, but I really, I miss them, and I'm praying that they don't get COVID. I mean, I'm vaccinated. I'm all right. To be Bishop, I'm fully. I got all my antibodies. My tank is full. You understand? And I'm okay. So I could take off my mask and walk, but as a matter of courtesy, and everybody should show people we want to continue wearing the mask. I keep on my mask, keep it protocol, and encourage other persons to do so.
Let's have Reverend Denny. Your question, Reverend Denny. All right. If she's not there, then let's take another from Pastor Derek.
You hear me?
Yes, we hear you now.
It's Brother Denny and not Reverend Denny.
All right. I didn't know which one.
Very interesting program. It's very extended. Maybe this program should have been broadcast nationwide entirely, because the amount of information we have been receiving is enormous in comparison to what I personally have been hearing before. It is so detailed that I believe that this program or this presentation should be repeated in its entirety, if not all of it. So it's very informative and very enlightening. And everyone should be convinced at the end of this presentation, without any doubt, that I should and I am going to take or get immunized, because I believe they would have no questions, no doubt. Everything has been explained. However, the question I want to raise, and it has something to do with the last question that was raised about, as Doctor mentioned, the card or the COVID passport. But everyone can receive a card to say, I am fully immunized, whether or not they have been. And you may have to take that card for what it is. It might be authentic or not, but the question I really want to ask, are there any means of determining whether or not that person actually, scientifically, indeed has been fully immunized? Because I think if you present a card, that might be just the record, but scientifically and physically, for some reason, there should be some means of proving that indeed Dr. Thompson has been fully immunized. Could you explain anything further on that?
Yes, well, I think that this is really a question for Mr. Samuel, Elliot Samuel. Here in St. Vincent, we have 3 types of tests, and they basically are used. And I would like Elliot, please, if you could take this question and probably indicate, how it can possibly be done, especially with the rapid tests and so forth.
Hi, can you just repeat the question? I got a little distracted with it.
Oh, well, I would go on, because what they were asking is, how can somebody prove that, how can an authority prove that somebody was vaccinated? Or how can someone prove to an authority that they were actually vaccinated, even though they have a card? What kind of additional proof can there be besides the card?
The trick about it is that apart from the vaccination card, which has to be done by the nurse administering the vaccine, it's difficult to prove if the antibodies that is in your system is as a result of the vaccine or from a past infection. to date, and I've consulted with Paho on this. To date, I don't think we have anything that is going to definitively say that the antibodies that you have in your system is from the vaccine, as opposed to a natural infection.
Yes. What I was going to add, yes, they wouldn't prove it from a natural infection, but what if you would go somewhere and they were to, as I said, there are 3 types of tests that we have really available here in St. Vincent Grenadines. We have one where we could prick your finger to get blood and test it for antibodies to the virus. And we could also put a Q-tip in the back of your nose in order and do what's called a rapid test. We get a result back in half an hour. And then the ultimate, more definitive test, the PCR test, using a Q-tip to go in the back of your nose and doing the more sophisticated PCR test, which is highly accurate. But in the case of, even though we can't distinguish between whether you had a past infection or whether you had the vaccine, both of them would end up with your rapid test, finger test for blood being positive. Some persons who might have been exposed to the virus don't tend to have sometimes a positive test, but usually with vaccination, if you've been vaccinated well, it will tend to show a positive test, and that's the only way. But usually, I don't think countries are going to look to verify that. They may look at the card and look at its authenticity and so forth, but generally, I think some system will eventually develop, and we just have to wait and see what emerges with some international agreements on this matter.
Right. So proving vaccination may well turn out to be a Pandora's box. As it is now, when you take the vaccine and you develop that immune response, you're going to start producing IgM, and then it's going to go to IgG, and that is very much the same way that the body responds naturally. Because you are creating a piece of the virus, and this piece of the virus that you're creating mimics the actual virus down to a molecular level. It's very difficult to distinguish the response that has been had from the vaccine as opposed to what has been had naturally. So any scrutiny in terms of whether or not persons have been vaccinated has to be controlled tightly from the point of vaccination. So those vaccination cards has to be guarded. They have to be guarded, because ending up in the wrong hands, you can have a lot of
Well, sorry, Elliot. I already announced that I have a whole packet of them, and I have them available for the church. I already said that. Sorry,
but they're not going to be distributed unless you have received the vaccine.
Yes.
Right.
All
so
right, okay.
and they have to be signed off on and stamped as well, with the seal of the Ministry of Health. So it's not that you're just going to be walking around with a card.
Okay, all right.
So as a Christian people, we have to be honest, you see. So
you have to be honest.
Yeah, we wouldn't want to do that, right?
I do.
Also, let me just add to that, Pastor. There might be adverse situation as well, where, for instance, there has been an accident. People are either critical, unconscious, or what. You may want to determine also, in the absence of the injured having a card, any evidence to show that they have been vaccinated. For some reason, there might be a need for that, and you also would need to know or prove whether or not they actually have been. You know what I mean? So
yes,
there's some situation may develop that. You just can't determine that.
Yes.
So
forensic purposes and so forth. Yeah, I agree. These things may be necessary.
It need exploring.
All right.
Right. Thank you very much there. Thank you.
Yes,
okay. We have the last person, so we'll wind down now. So
yes.
Pastor Derek, shoot your questions and we come to the end.
Okay. I think I would ask all of them and give you the opportunity to respond. Question number one, how many doses of the present vaccine does one have to take? And what are the expected side effects of each dose? Number two, why can't natural products such as fruits be used to build immunity? Number three, if the present vaccine is under examination, why haven't the authorities halted until such examination has been completed? And those are my questions.
Yes, I think very, very good questions. And basically, yes, there are, the first question, could you just ask the first question on the dose again, please? Ask the question one more time. The first question was what again?
How many doses of the present vaccines do we have to take? And
Yes.
what are the expected side effects of each dose?
Yes. So that you need to take 2 doses. One dose is the preliminary dose, and the other dose is considered to be a primary booster. Yes, and that's the second dose is a primary booster, and we recommend that you take the second dose 10 weeks after taking the first. We already said that 1 in 10 persons can experience what we call adverse effects, which are type of side effects. And these adverse effects are virtually the same for the first dose or for the second dose. 1 in 10 would typically have some of these adverse effects. During the first dose, same 1 in 10. During the second dose, the person may not have any symptoms at all. There's no guarantee, there's no indication that the person who had an adverse reaction with the first dose will have an adverse reaction to the second dose. And there's no indication that the person who did not have any adverse reaction to the first dose will not have something with the second dose. We found that there are very few people who have all eight, pain at the injection site, redness for a little while, muscle aches, joint pains, fever, chills, nausea, headaches, and so forth. There are very few people who have all 8. I'll be a little lucky. And usually it may last for a day, sometimes 36 hours, really no more than about 2 days. It's very, very rare that these will go on for any time longer. And as I said, the headaches are certainly amenable and taken care of with a Panadol, a paracetamol, or something of that nature. If you have any joint pains, again, paracetamol is what we recommend. We don't always recommend taking Advil or aspirin or anything like that. You know, we don't generally call it. But so we tend to go with, tell people to drink a lot of fluids and so forth. And usually these symptoms tell us as doctors that the vaccine is working. The vaccine is really, really, really working. Now, it doesn't mean if you don't have any of these symptoms, it means that the vaccine is not working. But if you do have these symptoms, it just means that the vaccine is really working in a particular way. And so having these symptoms, we don't consider them as hard side effects. We consider them as being adverse reactions. Even those are also reported. We consider side effects as being more severe, I think. Anti-hearing symptoms, as I said, we've had one person who fainted, another person who may have had some boils come up one way, and that's it. You know, we haven't had any sort of major adverse reaction. We have not had any death. We've given out. We're on our way to our 9,000. That's the next zeros. And basically, you know, we have not seen anything substantial that would trigger. Any reaction has to be reported to the World Health Organization on a weekly basis. Now, so that's in relation to things. Now, the other question you asked was, I had written down here. What's that? I'm sorry about this. What was the second question?
It's about natural products such as fruits. Why can't
Oh,
we use that
yes.
to
Yes. Well,
build
look,
immunity?
I have a slide up here. And I know you can still see it but at this time. If my immune system is strengthened with turmeric, ginger, and good food, then it should be able to fight off the virus. Well, I want to explain this to you very carefully because everyone should know I have a park out at Brighton Salt Pond, the mangrove. I take care. One of my great interests is in these very exotic plants. You know, not just seed on the leaf and body me eye, but Congo lala, EKPE, and some other plants that may well have some medicinal properties. Sometimes we are not sure of other products that are inside, the other chemicals that are inside a particular plant, but I believe there's lots of benefits. But are they good enough to kill a virus? I am saying to you that almost $20 million has been spent on trying to find new medications that kill viruses, and we've come up with zero. Now, I'm not talking about a virus that, a medication that might tell the virus war. I'm talking about something that kills it. You know what I mean? Something that really is effective at killing it. At least 30%, 40%, 50%, if not 100%. We don't have those things. And you would have heard Donald Trump touting hydroxychloroquine, or telling people to drink bleach, or telling people to use ultraviolet light. I'm saying to you that we've not found anything that's effective. The most important thing, taking these fruits do not create antibodies. They may help boost your immune system to a small degree, but they are not generating the antibodies that could put handcuffs on the virus, that could do like the Black Squad and really hold it down and arrest the virus in a particular way that is not going to do any damage. You don't want to take any chances and have the virus floating around in your blood, hitting your heart, hitting your blood vessels, attacking your kidneys, attacking your pancreas and generating diabetes, attacking your brain and giving you brain fog. You don't want a situation that 4 months later, even though you are symptomatic, you're now realizing the virus was floating around. Yeah, the virus was floating around your blood and was damaging your internal organs. Now, I believe the question you're really asking, can I take fruits and vegetables and herbs that can be an alternative to the vaccine? Can I eat these things and it will prevent me from getting any disease, diabetes, hypertension, cancer? The chances are eating healthy will reduce, but I have put it here. Sometimes you're exposed to a very large dose of the virus. You're in a room, small room, and the person is singing or coughing and so forth, and you can't get away, and you're there for hours, and you're inhaling all those viruses, droplets down into your lungs. I'm not talking about just coming and butting up on the person, say, hi, how are you? And you're gone, right? Which is a chance meeting and a very short meeting. I'm talking about you exposing, you're inhaling the stuff. The turmeric and the ginger and the fruits and other things that are not going to help you. And then there are different types of viruses. There are some viruses that would just cause a very, 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 very mild cold. And yes, those type of things may help to knock it out. Those are the viruses that, but when you have a very virulent virus, an infectious virus, a virus that is mean and want to kill you, yes, Sam? Don't play with it to say that you're already fortified by turmeric and ginger. I want to put it to you. I have done work with some of the most terrible viruses. I want to show you something. If I could, since you're the last person. I've said back, I wasn't sure if these kind of the slides would be needed. But I want to show you this. If person could see, oh, I've got the wrong slide, you know? I want to show you this. This is somebody with smallpox. This is somebody, you see this leg? Now everybody knows chickenpox, what chickenpox looks like. Very, very small things, about boils on your skin about the size of a matchstick. These boils here are about the size of a quarter. Some of them can eventually get to the size of $1. This lady, she basically had them all over her skin, inside her eyes. It caused her to be blind. This was in Birmingham in 1978. I shouldn't say the year. Now you say, okay, I tell you my age. But I am working in a virology lab. And it's my first month in the virology lab. And where I was working was one of the centers for research. And they brought a specimen from where this lady was to look at it on the electron microscope. And I had to set up the electron microscope. It's only after they left, I realized they were talking about this case in Birmingham. There was no internet in those days. And they basically told me, oh, it was a case of smallpox and so forth. And I went to the library and I read up on smallpox. And for 4 or 5 days, Bishop, I was looking at every single part of my skin to see if I had one of these boils coming up. Only later on to be told, no, I could not get one of these things because it was just a specimen. It wasn't the real live thing. But this lady, she was the last case of smallpox in England. The last case of smallpox. They had some stores of smallpox. They decided to move it to some other country and so forth. But the point I'm making is that this lady died within 5 days. This smallpox was one of the most contagious diseases. When Cortez came over from Spain to tackle Montezuma in Mexico and the Aztecs, the Montezuma, they had almost 300,000 men to battle Cortez. Some of Cortez people had smallpox, latent smallpox, and the smallpox spread throughout the Aztec race, killing 2/3 of the people. 200,000 people were died. And that's how they were defeated. In Haiti and Dominican Republic, the original tribe that was there got wiped out by measles and smallpox. Smallpox was here in St. Vincent several times. This thing here, you see children, when I went to England at the age of 3 years old. I received my smallpox just like this, with this mark. They would put it, they had the smallpox impregnated on that, and they made a mark on your skin. And guess what? They called that over the period of time the mark of the beast. Several people and organizations didn't like it, so they called it the mark of the beast. And that helped prevent some people from getting the smallpox vaccine at the time. Anyway, they were finally able to eradicate smallpox. Smallpox used to kill hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people over time. And they were successfully able to get rid of smallpox. We are now almost rid of polio through vaccination. We haven't had a case of that in St. Vincent for 40 years. There are people I know who are 45, 46, 47-year-old who had polio, but they did not get the polio when it really came in. So, Pastor, I want to say that fruits and those sort of things work. They are just not going to be enough for the really bad viruses. They'll be okay maybe for a little cold and a little flu, but not for these bad boys, you know, these pestilence, you know, that crawleth. And I just want to just point out that everyone should continue to eating fruits, eating these things, higher antioxidant things, stay away from sugar, you know, and stay away from salt. But I want to also encourage them to take this vaccine, because this is the thing that specifically and in a targeted way is going to protect them from this coronavirus, which can kill. And I want to say, I don't want to say it's going to kill more Vincentian. I don't want it to kill a 10th Vincentian. And I hope that we vaccinate sufficiently so that it does not.
Okay. All right, well, we heard, and Dr. Thompson, one of the things I said to the folks, we were bringing you all on so that people can hear for themselves, receive the information, and eventually you would see the results, what would happen, because as I said, the problem you have at times, people are hearing a lot of negative things, and you know, you go on Facebook, you're just bombarded with it, and so now we have heard it, and forgive me for saying it like this, but we have heard it from the horse's mouth. All right, so we want to thank you for coming and sharing with us. Also, Mr. Elliot Samuel, and Shanika is the person I try to contact a lot. Thank you all. Thank you for coming. All right, and we see where we go from here. All right, also want to say hello. I see some people, they have dropped off, I guess time for bed, but we have heard a whole lot. And so now we can make an informed decision with regards to what we are doing. The presentation was really extensive. You know, it really ministered, spoke, it informed me a lot. Some things I really didn't understand. It brought clarity to it. Okay, so this is it, and we need to move forward now as a people. All right, so once again, thank you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for coming. And so, Father, we just thank you for this privilege. We pray, God, that you'll just touch our hearts and our minds. Thank you for those you have in key places that they can do these presentations, they can speak to us. And so, Lord, we pray that you'll have your way among us. Help us, Lord. We were given the information, and may we apply it now and do what is right. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so God bless you, folks. Have a great night. And we will talk some more. All right?
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, welcome. All right, bye-bye.
Everyone.
Bye.